Chapter 881. Yen Patian and Yen Qingyi bid farewell and left to search for the whereabouts of Rockefeller and the people of the island nation. Tang Jing returned to his room alone to rest. The others had been in a state of fear for the entire night. In addition, they had gone through a great battle. They were all exhausted and returned to their rooms to rest. Yi Dingding did not go home, but chose a room to stay in. Therefore, even though the sky was already bright, the villa was still quiet. Mu Hongyan sat in front of the dressing table and looked at herself in the mirror. When she recalled the scene just now, her cheeks couldn't help but turn pink, like a shy young girl. No one has ever been willing to sacrifice their life for me. Even Nana's father was unable to do this back then. Could it be that Tang Jing has some thoughts about me? When she thought of this, she was actually not angry. She was only a little flustered and at a loss. I'm no longer a little girl. I'm already old, how can I compare to a young girl? She looked at herself in the mirror. In fact, she was still as beautiful as ever. Her skin was as white as snow, and her mature charm was unstoppable. What am I thinking about? I really don't know shame. She rubbed her cheeks and suppressed the charming thoughts in her heart. She took a deep breath and barely managed to regain her composure. Tang Jing didn't even eat breakfast before going to rest. It's not good for his health. Moreover, after a great battle, he consumed a lot of energy. I'll go make some food for him. She went to the kitchen, cooked a bowl of fragrant noodles, and brought it to Tang Jing's door. All the girls lived upstairs, and only Tang Jing lived alone on the first floor. Therefore, no one else noticed what she had done. Standing in front of Tang Jing's door, she couldn't help but feel a little flustered. She patted her chest a few times to indicate that she had calmed down, and then gently knocked on the door. Who is it? Tang Dang's voice immediately sounded. It was obvious that he had not fallen asleep yet. It's me. Can I come in? Come in. She opened the door and walked in. She saw Tang Jing bare-chested and wearing shorts. Tang Jing's figure was very good, and his 8-pack abs were very eye-catching. Although Mu Hongyan was experienced, seeing this body made her heart beat faster. She quickly concealed her inner thoughts and looked straight ahead. She didn't dare to look at Tang Jing any longer. I've cooked a bowl of noodles for you. Eat it while it's still hot, and then rest. You must be exhausted after such a long day. Tang Jing was slightly stunned. He didn't expect her to be so thoughtful. He smiled. Sister Mu, you are too polite. My body is very good. I won't be hungry if I don't eat. Mu Hongyan said seriously. Although you're young, you can't be so careless with your health. Humans are made of iron and steel. If you don't eat a meal, you'll be hungry. I'm not as capable as them, so I can only cook for you. Tang Jing's smile suddenly froze. That last sentence was too misleading. She was going to let him eat the noodles. Why am I so dirty? Tang Jing complained to himself. He quickly got rid of these messy thoughts. Seeing his reaction, the smart Mu Hongyan immediately realized the ambiguity in her words. Her heart was anxious and embarrassed. How could I say such shameless words? Looking at his appearance, he must have misunderstood. Then what will he think of me? In a moment of desperation, her hand slightly trembled and the bowl fell from her hand. Tang Jing's eyes were sharp and his hands were fast. He immediately reacted and his figure flashed in front of her. His big hand reached out and caught the bowl. Mu Hongyan was in a daze. She only felt a strong masculine aura hit her in the face. Tang Jing's bare upper body was just inches away, creating a strong visual impact for her. Her breathing suddenly became rapid. Her cheeks were as red as an apple and her eyes were blurred. Mu Hongyan was nearly 30 years old. It was the age of tigers and wolves. She had not come into contact with a man for so many years. Tang Jing was so outstanding. In this kind of environment, he instantly firmly attracted all of her attention. All kinds of thoughts that were originally suppressed came flooding in like a tide. She unexpectedly reached out her hand and pressed it on Tang Jing's chest. Tang Jing was suddenly startled. Like a sculpture, he did not move. He held the bowl in one hand and stopped in midair with the other hand, not knowing what to do. He looked at Mu Hongyan with a complicated gaze. Seeing her reaction, his heart swayed. A woman was most beautiful when she was in love. Without a doubt, Mu Hongyan was in love now. That flirtatious appearance was like a fire seed that fell into Tang Deng's body. His current cultivation was profound. Without a doubt, his pure yang energy had been accumulating. Moreover, because of Lan Yu's arrival, he did not dare to casually sneak into anyone's room at home. Therefore, during this period of time, his pure yang energy was only accumulating. Without the harmony of yin and yang, it had long become restless. Without a doubt, Mu Hongyan's fire seed ignited the pure yang energy in his body, causing him to become restless. Mu Hongyan's hand came into close contact with Tang Deng's skin. She could not help but feel an electric shock. This was a feeling she had not felt for many years. Her eyes were blurred, her eyes were wandering, and her breath was like orchids. She could not help but think of the scene of Tang Jing saving her without hesitation. Her heart softened again. If a woman had such a man to protect her, what else could she ask for? Career, power, money? She did not want any of them. She only wanted such a man, such strong shoulders, broad chest, and warm embrace. She was in a daze and actually rushed forward to hug Tang Jing. That warm embrace gave her a sense of security that was particularly intoxicating. Although she had a high position and was a strong woman, she had not felt safe for many years. Ever since Tang Jing appeared and saved Nana, her life gradually became safe. No matter what she was worried about, as long as she saw Tang Jing, she would feel exceptionally safe. No matter what difficulties she faced, Tang Jing would solve them. When she was captured by Rockefeller, she could not get rid of Tang Deng's figure in her mind. She had a faint expectation that Tang Jing would definitely come to save her. Later, her dream came true. Tang Jing really did come to save her, and in a tragic way, he sacrificed his own life. At that time, she was completely moved. At that moment, she was completely captivated by Tang Jing. At this moment, hugging Tang Jing and feeling the warmth from his chest and his strong heartbeat, she finally understood her thoughts. Her heart no longer belonged to herself, because it was filled with Tang Jing. Being hugged by such a hot woman, Tang Jing could not bear it. With a wave of his hand, the bowl flew steadily to the table next to him, and he carefully hugged her with both hands. Feeling the response of Tang Jing's hands, Mu Hongyan's dry heart seemed to be injected with rain, and her body and soul were full. Her body gradually heated up, and she hugged Tang Jing tighter with both hands. Reluctant to let go, she said as if in a dream, "Tang Jing, in order to save me, you did not hesitate to sacrifice yourself." I. For a moment, thousands of words came to her mind, but she did not know where to start. There was a voice in Tang Jing's heart that shouted loudly, "I want her!" His hand could not help but support her waist. Her waist was very thin, soft, and amazingly elastic. Mu Hongyan's hand rubbed Tang Jing's back, which aroused the fire in Tang Deng's head. He lowered his head and kissed her red lips. Like dry wood meeting a raging fire, the two of them were burning. Mu Hongyan had her own unique advantages. Like a ripe peach, she could especially tease men's heartstrings. Tang Jing was no exception. In the face of such temptation, he could not resist at all. Mu Hongyan's kiss was very intense. It was completely different from Fang Shishir and the others. It was as if she could mobilize every cell in Tang Jing's body and stimulate every nerve in his body. After a long drought, her heart and body eagerly hoped to be nourished by Tang Jing. Tang Jing's pure yang energy completely broke out. The strong masculine aura intoxicated her, and their hands were not willing to give up on the status quo. Tang Jing's hand had already drilled into her clothes. In the summer, she wore cool clothes. Mu Hongyan felt her whole body stiffen. Two big hands had already invaded her body. Usually, when she walked on the street, she was very disgusted by the aggressive and hot eyes of other men. But for Tang Jing, she only liked him. She also had a faint expectation that he would be more intense. Tang Jing was preparing to attack the city and take over the land. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. Tang Jing, I have something to talk to you about. It was the Empyrean fairy's voice. As if a bucket of cold water had been poured over their heads, the two of them calmed down in an instant. They looked at each other, and were very flustered. Mu Hongyan released him as if she had been electrocuted. Tang Jing's hand also reluctantly withdrew. Looking at the red face of Mu Hongyan, the fire in his heart kept burning. He gritted his teeth hatefully. Why was the Empyrean fairy so annoying? It was wrong to disturb someone else's good time. Mu Hongyan's heart still had a lingering fear. There were other people in the house, and one of them was Tang Gang's official girlfriend. If she was caught doing this, how could she face them? How could she face others? She quickly tidied up her clothes and adjusted her breathing. However, the deep affection in her eyes could not be concealed. Bang! The Empyrean fairy seemed to be impatient, and directly opened the door and walked in. Why are you here? The Empyrean fairy looked at Mu Hongyan suspiciously. Mu Hongyan felt guilty, and did not dare to look at the Empyrean fairy. She was afraid that she would find out something was wrong. She lowered her head and said, I cooked a bowl of noodles for him. Tang Jing, after you eat, just bring the bowl to the kitchen. After saying that, she hurriedly walked out without looking back. The fairy of the 9 heavens looked at her back with suspicion, as if she was deep in thought. Tang Jing quickly diverted her attention and asked, Why are you looking for me? I forgot to ask you just now. What is the deal with Yanqingyi's prophecy technique? Last night, she had a long talk with Yanqingyi. Yanqingyi had told her about the prophecy technique. However, the Empyrean fairy was not satisfied. She thought that Yanqingyi was still hiding something, so she wanted to get more information from Tang Jing. The flame on Tang Jing's head was still burning. Mu Hongyan had slipped away. She only cared about killing and not burying. This made him suffer. Seeing the Empyrean fairy staring at him, he knew that he could not easily send her away. Otherwise, she would definitely make wild guesses and perhaps discover the truth. He picked up the noodles and ate, while absent-mindedly dealing with the Empyrean fairy. Mu Hongyan ran back to the room. She leaned against the door and felt weak all over. She could barely stand. Chapter 882. Tang Jing didn't know what happened after Mu Hongyan returned to her room. He was busy dealing with the Empyrean fairy. She was extremely interested in prophecy and kept on asking him questions. Tang Jing actually didn't know much about prophecy. He gave a general explanation, but it was all from what Yanqingyi had told the Empyrean fairy. She didn't get anything and was very unwilling to give up. She stared straight at Tang Jing, as if trying to see through the truth in his words. Tang Jing had no choice but to spread his hands. That's all I know. She said you were the savior in her prophecy. She should be wrong. Her latest prophecy has already refuted this point of view. I'm not some savior. In any case, you played a big role in it. And from her description, it seems that the prophecy happened at Mount Buzhou. Tang Jing nodded. There was no need to hide this, he said openly. Didn't you also go to Mount Buzhou to take a look? Did you find anything new with her prophecy? I'll investigate it myself, the Empyrean fairy said. Apparently, she didn't find anything new for the time being. All right, I've finished my noodles, so I'm going to rest. Tang Jing carried the bowl into the kitchen, leaving the mysterious maiden of the 9 heavens to return to her room in deep thought. Tang Jing returned to his room and lay down. His heart was 9, but the flames in his heart were still restless. He looked down and found that a tent had already been set up. This won't do. I'll be finished if this kind of pure yang energy erupts. Moreover, it's at such a critical time. If the pure yang energy erupts during a battle, then I won't be able to keep my life. He got out of bed and tiptoed to the 2nd floor. Just as he was about to sneak into Mu Hongyan's room, Yi Dingding suddenly opened the door and walked out. Oh no! Tang Jing cried out inwardly, but there was no way he could retreat. He could only brace himself and ask, Why aren't you resting? I'm not used to a new bed. What are you doing? Of course, Tang Jing did not dare to say that he was looking for Mu Hongyan. He had an idea and took advantage of the situation to pull Yi Dingdang into the room. He closed the door and said, "I missed you, so I came to look for you." Sweet talk. That being said, Yi Dingdang was obviously very happy. "Humph, you were still very introverted in high school. Why are you getting more and more thick-skinned now?" Tang Jing chuckled. "Did he say so? Why didn't I notice?" As he spoke, he reached out and hugged Yi Dingdang. "Hey, what are you doing?" Yi Dingdang felt as if she had been electrocuted. She quickly dodged, but she couldn't escape from Tang Dang's evil claws. She was tightly held in his arms. "Why is your body so hot?" Yi Dingdang suddenly asked. "I missed you." Tang Jing could no longer hold back the restless pure yang energy. His large hands began to misbehave. "Don't." Yi Dingdang's body stiffened. "There are so many people in the house. They will hear us." This was Yi Dingdang's first time living in Tang Dang's house. She never thought that she would encounter such a situation. Of course, she couldn't help but panic. Tang Jing gently comforted her. "Don't worry, the sound insulation is very good. They won't be able to hear us." "Do you usually do this kind of bad thing at home? Aren't you afraid that others will find out?" Yi Dingdang suddenly asked. Tang Jing couldn't help but sigh. This woman's brain circuit was really different. She could even think of this kind of question at this time. "How could that be?" Tang Jing said without blinking. He decided not to give her a chance to speak. He leaned over and kissed her. Yi Dingdang tenderly cried out, and could no longer say a word. In fact, after experiencing yesterday's incident, she was also a little scared. She just didn't show it. Now that she was alone with Tang Jing and fell into his passionate kiss, her emotions erupted like a flash flood. After a brief resistance, she devoted herself wholeheartedly and passionately responded to his demands. The two quickly fell on the bed and rolled into a ball, entangled together. This time, Yi Dingdang clearly felt a hot qi enter her body and wander through her meridians. Tang Jing also felt a cool pure yin energy enter his body and gradually neutralize the restless pure yang energy. Finally, it turned into qi and gathered in his dantian. Yi Dingdang had been deliberately suppressing her voice, but in the end, Tang Jing's strength was too great. She had no choice but to let go of her body and mind to cooperate with him. Fortunately, the room's sound insulation was good. Otherwise, everyone would have heard this beautiful and moving sound. In the afternoon, when Tang Jing woke up, there was no beauty beside him. This was because he had been driven out by Yi Dingdang and had to return to his room. The two were affectionate for a long time. Tang Dang's pure yang energy was finally appeased. The qi in his body increased a little. "AI, when will these sneaky days come to an end?" he sighed. However, even though he said so, he didn't dare to really publicize such a chaotic relationship. If he did, he was afraid that he wouldn't even have the opportunity to sneak around. He opened the door and walked out, only to find that everyone was gathered together. However, there were two more people in the living room. One was sitting, and the other was standing like a puppet. "Hey, Tian Chanzi, why are you here?" Tang Jing asked curiously. His gaze involuntarily fell on the standing person. Huang Xiang. This was once a hedonistic young master. However, in the end, he was taken in as a puppet by Tian Chanzi. He also followed Tang Jing for a period of time, but was later taken back by Tian Chanzi. He had always been puzzled as to what Tian Chanzi did with him. He didn't expect that he would be brought back today. Moreover, Tang Jing clearly felt that the yin energy on his body was dense. It was almost the same as the people in the ghost realm. This was the dog days of June, but just by standing there, he was better than the air conditioning. Almost the entire hall's temperature dropped by several degrees, making people feel cold. Seeing Tang Jing look at Huang Xiang, Tian Chanzi laughed. He waved at Tang Jing and pointed at Huang Xiang. He said proudly, "Tang Jing, look at my results." Tang Jing suspiciously stared at Huang Xiang and said, "His strength has increased a lot." "Haha, it's more than a lot. He's almost at the peak. Do you know? This is the advantage of being a puppet. His cultivation speed is amazingly fast. I think he's not much worse than you. Do you know what his current strength is equivalent to? The other party's energy was too heavy. He didn't have the conventional cultivation level. He could only rely on his combat ability to judge. Therefore, Tang Jing couldn't tell. He shook his head and said he didn't know. Tian Chanzi seemed to have known his answer. He said proudly, Golden Core 9th grade. It's higher than your Golden Core 7th grade. Hee, are you jealous? What, Golden Core 9th grade? Tang Jing was shocked. This was really beyond his expectations. One must know that Tang Geng's cultivation speed was already heaven-defying, but Huang Xiang was even more heaven-defying than him. I found him an excellent place, surrounded by 100 ghosts, and not a single blade of grass grew. If an ordinary person were to go there, they would probably be scared to death. He has been silently cultivating there, and in the end, all the ghosts were absorbed by him, which is why he has reached such a level of cultivation. Furthermore, he is invulnerable, and has an indestructible body, which is similar to your primal Chaos Vajra spell. Tian Chanzi was like a child showing off his toy, looking like he deserved a beating. The others were also shocked, especially Yi Dingdang. He had seen Huang Xiang before, but he never thought that his cultivation would be so powerful. After Tang Jing recovered from his shock, he was not envious, and said, After all, he doesn't have his own consciousness, and is a puppet, just like a dead object. No matter how high his cultivation is, no matter how fast his speed is, why would I be envious? This was the truth. If he lost his consciousness, and only pursued the increase of his strength, then he would be neglecting the essentials. Therefore, this was the power of a celestial walker. Under normal circumstances, his cultivation would increase at a godly speed. How could a puppet be compared to a celestial walker? Seeing that he did not hit Tang Jing, Tian Chanzi was extremely disappointed, and said unwillingly, Your mentality is really getting better and better. No wonder you don't have any inner demons. I don't know where you got such dog's hit luck. How could you not have any inner demons for no reason? Tang Jing had never told anyone about the matter of the Langya Pavilion. This was one of his biggest secrets, so of course he could not easily show it to others, so they did not know that he had used the exorcist mirror to do this. Tang Jing smiled faintly. Maybe this is because I'm handsome. Tian Chanzi was so angry that he glared at him fiercely and muttered, Can handsomeness be eaten? After a pause, he waved his hand at Fang Shishir, and Fang Shishir came in front of him. Tian Chanzi smiled with gratification. Good disciple, you have become my disciple, but I haven't given you a gift. That little brat has made fun of me many times, saying that I am stingy. How could he know my thoughts? How could I be stingy with my own disciple? Here, I brought you a gift today. After saying this, he pointed at Huang Xiang. Everyone was stunned. He actually wanted to give a 9th grade Golden Core Huang Xiang to Fang Shishir. Your cultivation is still too weak, so you will always be at a disadvantage when you meet enemies. Therefore, with him protecting you, normal people will definitely not be able to harm you in the future. Disciple, do you think this gift of mine is good? Tian Chanzi looked at Fang Shishir with shining eyes as if he was waiting for the word good from her mouth. Fang Shishir was stunned. She never thought that she would have such a powerful puppet to protect her, and for a moment, she was at a loss. However, when she looked at the gloomy Huang Xiang, her heart suddenly jumped, and she was somewhat unwilling to accept this gift. After all, girls liked beautiful things, and Huang Xiang really couldn't be considered beautiful. Tian Chanzi was stunned, and suspiciously asked, You don't want it? Master, senior sister doesn't want it, but I want it. Princess, and said without any disdain. Obviously, she was very clear about the value of such a puppet. Although it looked gloomy, it was powerful, and this temptation was not small. Tian Chanzi turned a deaf ear, as if he didn't even consider Princess, and they were the same master, but the difference in treatment was too big. The princess was very hurt. Master, this? Fang Shishir hesitated. Tang Jing was very clear about the use of Huang Xiang, and quickly said, Tian Chanzi, You are finally generous for once, Sure. Quickly thank your master. Oh! When Fan Sure heard Tang Jing say this, she swallowed back the words of refusal, and reluctantly squeezed out a smile, and reluctantly said, Thank you, master. Tian Chanzi wanted to cry, but no tears came out. Was there a master as miserable as him? He had carefully prepared this gift for so long, but his disciple didn't accept it, and even needed Tang Jing to say good words for him, before reluctantly accepting it. Chapter 883. Fan Sure reluctantly accepted this special gift. Tian Chanzi also told her how to control Huang Xiang, and was envious. This master was really biased. However, she didn't dare to be angry. Instead, she smiled and asked, Master, do I have a gift? Tian Chanzi awkwardly coughed and said, Master hasn't thought of what to give you yet. When the time comes, I will naturally give it to you. He accepted Princess Anne's crystal. Of course, he couldn't go back on his word. He couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed for being biased, and was very disappointed and unhappy. Good disciple, Master will definitely find a very good gift for you. That's right, does your father have any more crystals? Tian Chanzi tested the crystal and experienced the magic of the crystal, so he wanted a few more. Princess Anne hesitated and said, Father said that he doesn't have any more. Ai, that's a pity. Tian Chanzi sighed. Although he said that, he didn't believe that she didn't have any more. This kind of crystal was a foreign object. It couldn't be that there were only 2 of them. The other side must have hidden it, but he was too embarrassed to ask for it. After all, he was still En's master. He had to maintain a little of his master's image. 7 Tian Chanzi didn't want to continue the topic of gifts. He quickly changed the topic and said, Tang Jing, this time Rockefeller and the island nation came to find trouble with you. Do you need my help? Tang Jing thought about the power of the ancestor. He nodded and said, It's best if you stay and help. I guess there should be news in a day or 2. This group of people are like turtles shrinking their heads. But the capital is already like an iron can. They can't escape. Tian Chanzi didn't put Rockefeller in his eyes. He disdainfully curled his lips. A group of filthy things that can't enter the Hall of Elegance. Don't put them in your heart. However, I heard that you captured that girl, Li Xiaotian. You should have used the soul-searching technique to find out about the Azure Dragon Palace Hall, right? Tang Jing had already sorted out the information earlier. He nodded and said, Of course, we've gained a lot this time. I was just about to tell everyone about it. The Azure Dragon Hall is extremely mysterious, and we already know its exact location. Therefore, when the matters in the capital are settled, we will immediately go to the Azure Dragon Hall. This organization has been hiding mysteriously for so many years, and it is finally time to uncover its mysterious veil and expose it to the light of day. Hearing this, Tian Chanzi said excitedly, I've always wanted to meet the Azure Dragon Palace, but these guys are like rats, hiding in the dark corners and never showing themselves. I'm also helpless. After a slight pause, he asked again, Other than the address of the Azure Dragon Hall, what else is there? Li Xiaotian knows a lot of things about the Azure Dragon Hall, but she still doesn't know the true core. For example, the High Lord's true appearance, because he has always been wearing a mask. However, there is one thing that we didn't expect. The Azure Dragon Hall is divided into 3 groups. One group is the martial organization, Li Palace, and Sword Pavilion. The other group is the Flying Guillotine. This is an extremely powerful group of assassins, and we have already seen them in the 100,000 Mountains. At that time, we killed the Flying Guillotine's group and almost wiped out the majority of them. I thought that the Flying Guillotine was almost completely destroyed by us, but now I understand that my thinking was too simple. How is it too simple? Not only Tian Chanzi, but even the Empyrean fairy pricked up her ears. The Flying Guillotine's numbers are far more than that. That is only a part of it. In other words, we haven't destroyed the Flying Guillotine's core. Tang Jing said in a heavy tone. Those are all martial scholars. Could it be that the Azure Dragon Hall has nurtured so many martial scholars? Tian Chanzi was extremely shocked. He now understood the original composition of this world. There shouldn't be so many martial scholars. That is the truth. Li Xiaotian's information confirmed this point. As for how many members there are in the Flying Guillotine, even Li Xiaotian doesn't know. Tian Chanzi's thick eyebrows twitched, and said, "This Azure Dragon Hall is really powerful. Just what kind of person was New Era, who created the Azure Dragon Hall?" Tang Jing also couldn't imagine it. However, since the other party was able to expel all the cultivators in this world, it was enough to show how powerful he was. Then what about the third group? Empyrean Fairy asked. The third group is the Azure Dragon Hall's consecrators. Actually, we have already seen them. The fair-faced flying dragon is one of them. Right now, the Azure Dragon Hall has a total of 3 great consecrators. Other than the fair-faced flying dragon, there is also the Elder Angler. The last one is very mysterious. It is said that she is a woman. Even Li Xiaotian has never seen her before. These consecrators are very powerful. Among them, the fair-faced flying dragon's cultivation is the weakest. However, you have already seen it. He is already a martial king. Tang Jing spoke tirelessly. His heart was also stirred up. The layers of mysteries of the Azure Dragon Hall were unveiled. What was revealed was a truth that shocked even Tang Jing. Tian Chanzi's eyes flickered with an ominous glint, and said, "Since the Azure Dragon Hall is so mysterious and powerful, then we cannot just sit and wait for death. This time, we must take the initiative to attack and give the other party a fatal blow." Tang Jing nodded his head in agreement. This was also his point of view. If the other party received the news and escaped, then they would not be able to find him in this boundless land. Therefore, you did the right thing. You must not let that girl Sernamedly go back and spread the news. In order to avoid future troubles, we must get rid of her now, Tian Chanzi said decisively. With a thought from Tang Jing, Li Xiaotian flew out from Sumeru World and lay on the sofa motionless. Tang Jing looked around and discovered that everyone was curiously looking at Li Xiaotian. Even Nana was no exception. Nana was ignorant and asked curiously, "Is Sister Li asleep?" She had seen Li Xiaotian before and had a deep impression of him. Tang Geng's heart moved. The child was here, so he naturally could not kill her at home and dirty the house. Thus, he smiled at Nana and said, "Nana, go back to your room and play." "Oh." Nana stared suspiciously and returned to her room under the guidance of Mu Hongyan. Tang Jing looked at everyone and said, "I will take her out first." Marshall hated Li Xiaotian to the bone and said, "You must kill her. You cannot let her harm others." Regarding Li Xiaotian's various actions, Marshall had long been unable to suppress her anger and killing intent. This vicious woman had almost caused her to lose 2 of her most important people. How could she forgive her? Tang Jing nodded and carried Li Xiaotian out of the villa and walked straight into a nearby forest. Looking at her beautiful face, Tang Jing sighed. In your next life, be a good person. Don't be so scheming and have a heart as poisonous as snakes and scorpions. Tang Jing was about to put her down when he discovered that she was slowly opening her eyes and waking up. Tang Jing's heart trembled and he subconsciously let go of her hand. Bang! Li Xiaotian came into close contact with the ground. She cried out, "It hurts, it hurts!" Tears actually flowed out of her eyes as she cried like a pear blossom in the rain. Tang Jing was shocked as he looked at her in disbelief. Didn't she become a fool because of the soul-searching technique? How could she still cry out in pain so clearly and even cry? Especially that gaze just now, it was incomparably clear, like a baby's eyes, without any impurities or emotions. This was completely different from the dim and unfocused eyes of a foolish person. Tang Jing's heart jumped. Could it be that something unexpected had happened? However, his strength was much higher than Li Xiaotian's, so he was not worried. Even if there was a problem, he could personally take care of her. Li Xiaotian cried as she wiped the tears from her eyes. She turned her head and looked at Tang Jing with a wronged expression and said, "Why did you throw me to the ground?" It hurts. Her eyes were red and she had a pitiful look on her face. Tang Jing did not dare lower his guard. He coldly snorted and said, "Stop pretending. How can this amount of pain be considered?" He was already certain that Li Xiaotian had not become a fool. Vampires would not become foolish under his soul-searching technique, so the after-effects of the soul-searching technique could not be lumped together. It was just that most people would become foolish, and a small portion would be less affected. You say I'm pretending? How can this be an act? You can try it yourself if you don't believe me. My butt really hurts. She gently rubbed her butt as she mumbled. Li Xiaotian, at this point you can stop acting. Tang Jing said coldly. Li Xiaotian? You said my name is Li Xiaotian? Why can't I remember who I am? Where is this and who are you? Li Xiaotian's clear eyes were filled with confusion. She hugged her head and shook it vigorously. Am I really called Li Xiaotian? What kind of person am I? And who are you to me? Li Xiaotian fired out a series of questions that made Tang Jing dumbfounded. Could it be that the after-effects of the soul-searching technique was to erase her memories? No! He definitely could not believe her so easily. Tang Jing secretly clenched his teeth as he recalled Li Xiaotian's actions. She was too cunning. What if she was pretending? Can you answer my questions? I'm so scared. Why can't I remember anything? Why did I become like this? Her face revealed a panicked expression that was very realistic. For a moment, Tang Jing could not tell if it was real or fake. Tang Jing clenched his fists. At this time, killing her would be as easy as flipping his hand. Tang Jing secretly circulated his true qi, preparing to make his move. Li Xiaotian suddenly grabbed Tang Jing's clothes and looked at him pitifully, saying, "You were hugging me just now, so you must be my friend, right? Tell me what happened. I'm so scared." Her eyes were as clear as the world's purest spring water, just like a baby's eyes. This made Tang Jing's tightly clenched fists loosen a bit. A thought kept urging him in his mind. Kill her. She is a liar. This is a lie. You can't be fooled by her. But when Tang Jing looked at those eyes, he knew that they were not the eyes of the Li Xiaotian of the past. Even if Li Xiaotian pretended to be pitiful, her eyes were still filled with craftiness. Tang Jing had been with her for a long time, so she definitely could not fool him. But when he looked at that familiar face, he could not help but think of her misdeeds. Chapter 884. Tang Jing looked into her eyes and wanted to make a move several times, but he gave up in the end. If she really lost her memories, then he wouldn't be killing the real Li Xiaotian, but a completely new person with no memories. If she was still the original Li Xiaotian, then he wouldn't hesitate and wouldn't show any mercy. Could it be that this was the will of the heavens, giving her a chance to turn over a new leaf? This was equivalent to her being reborn. You really don't remember anything from the past? Tang Jing asked. Li Xiaotian shook her head. I don't remember anything. You're not lying to me? Why would I lie to you? I've never lied to anyone. Tang Jing had always wanted to find a flaw in her. As long as there was a trace of a flaw, he would make a move without hesitation. But he didn't find a single flaw. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to figure it out with just a few words. Since that was the case, then he would deal with her a bit more. He didn't choose to go home. Instead, he took her out of the small forest and into the bustling street. When observing a person, it was best to blend into the environment. At this time, her vigilance would be lowered and she would involuntarily reveal a flaw. Seeing that Tang Jing was silent, Li Xiaotian asked, Are we friends? Tang Jing sneered. They were mortal enemies, but he didn't say that. Instead, he asked, What do you think? I think. She subconsciously recalled the scene when Tang Jing hugged her. Her cheeks turned red. You hugged me just now. Are we a couple? Couple? Tang Jing staggered and almost fell down. Who would want to be a couple with you? That would be courting death. What's wrong? Could it be that I guessed correctly? Li Xiaotian asked with bright eyes. No, Tang Jing said in a bad mood. No means no. Why are you so fierce? So scary. Li Xiaotian pouted, looking pitiful. Tang Jing glared at her speechlessly. You dare to say that I'm scary? You're the one who's scary. Then why don't you tell me about my past? Li Xiaotian said with a smile. What happened to you in the past? Tang Jing muttered to himself. If he told her the truth, how would she feel? But if she really had no memory, wouldn't that make her become the black-bellied woman in the past? That would be a great sin. Tang Jing thought for a while and said, You used to be an ordinary girl. Ordinary girl? Don't I have anything special about me? She seemed a little disappointed. What do you want to be different? She tilted her head and thought for a while before shaking her head and saying, I don't know either. The two of them chatted casually. Tang Jing had been secretly observing her reaction, but he hadn't found any flaws yet. Ah! Suddenly, a scream broke the silence. Tang Jing hurriedly turned his head to look at the source of the sound. He saw a woman standing on the street screaming, staring at a child in the middle of the road. A car was speeding towards the child. He had already stepped on the brakes, but it was too late. The woman had been scared silly. She was like a puppet, only knowing how to scream. There was no doubt that the child must be her child. Seeing a child about to die under the wheel of a car, Tang Jing was ready to save the child but found that a figure had already rushed over like lightning and hugged the child. Bang! The car hit the person. She and the child flew up together and fell to the ground far away. But she always held the child in her arms and let her back touch the ground. Tang Jing was also stunned by this scene. It was Li Xiaotian who saved the child. The real Li Xiaotian would never do such a thing. She would only think about herself. Why would she risk her life to save a little life that had nothing to do with her? All of this subverted Tang Jing's understanding and reduced his suspicion of Li Xiaotian by a lot. However, seeing her rush out quickly and use such a clumsy method to save the child, Tang Jing was a little confused. Li Xiaotian's power was still there, but she had lost her memory, so she didn't know that she had such great ability. Just now, she had only reacted instinctively and rushed over as fast as she could. Then, she didn't know what to do next. So, she was directly sent flying. If she dies from the collision, then I don't have to worry about whether to kill her or not. No, this was too despicable. Tang Jing hurriedly shook his head. She risked her life to save someone, but he cursed her to die. This was too immoral. He rushed over quickly and found Li Xiaotian lying on the ground, grimacing and twitching her mouth in pain. But her eyes looking at the child in her arms were particularly gentle. She gently touched the child's face and asked with concern, Little friend, are you okay? The child was scared out of his wits and was stunned. He stared at her with his eyes wide open. Suddenly, the child burst into tears. Li Xiaotian panicked and quickly got up. She checked the child with both hands and said anxiously, Little friend, don't cry. Did you fall down somewhere? Tell me, let's go to the hospital. That anxious look definitely didn't seem to be fake. Tang Jing stood aside and quietly observed her every move. He couldn't help but feel absurd. Did the soul-searching technique really transform the two-faced woman, erase her memory, and turn her into such a caring person? Even so, the soul-searching technique erased only her memory, and now her reaction was more like instinct, that is to say, her nature was not bad. It was only because she received training and education from Li Palace from an early age that she became a cynical woman little by little. At this moment, she returned to her most innocent face. At the beginning of man, his nature was good, and this was her initial period. Since God let her start over, I can't push her into the dark abyss again. Looking at her heartfelt concern for the child, Tang Jing silently made up his mind. Come and help me see him. What's wrong with him? Is he hurt? Li Xiaotian anxiously shouted at Tang Jing, completely unaware that her elbow had been bleeding. At this time, the child's mother finally woke up from her dream and rushed over crazily. She hugged the child and said, Baby, Mom is here. Did you fall down somewhere? Tang Jing walked over and comforted her. Big sister, don't worry. The child is fine. He was just frightened. The child's mother also saw the scene just now and knew that the child didn't fall to the ground. It was the little girl in front of her who saved her child. Thump! Her legs went soft, and she directly knelt in front of Li Xiaotian. She sobbed and said, "Miss, thank you for saving my child. You are the benefactor of my entire family. Thank you, woo woo woo." Li Xiaotian quickly helped him up. There were already a lot of onlookers gathered around them. They were all talking at once, but without exception, they were all praising Li Xiaotian. There were also those who praised the child's life. Pa! Pa! It was unknown who was the first to clap, but then, the applause sounded like a tide, and many people gave Li Xiaotian a thumbs up. The driver also stopped the car and walked over in a daze. This time, it wasn't his fault. The child ran into the middle of the road when the mother wasn't paying attention. When the driver saw it, he braked, but it was too late. The driver saw that the child was fine and looked at Li Xiaotian. He asked nervously, "Miss, how are you?" Li Xiaotian finally reacted and cried out in pain. Looking at the blood on her elbow and the faint pain from her back, her tears fell like a kite with a broken string. Previously, she couldn't stop crying when she was thrown to the ground by Tang Jing. Now that she was hit by a car, the pain was many times more intense. But just now, all her thoughts were on the child and she didn't feel the pain. Now that she calmed down, she felt as if her whole body was falling apart. Seeing her cry heartbreakingly, the others were very distressed. The child's mother quickly said, "Miss, let's go to the hospital to check if you fell." "That's right, you must go to the hospital for a checkup. You're a good Samaritan. Nowadays, people don't even dare to help the elderly. There aren't many good people like you left. We can't let the lady do a good deed and still be disappointed." Everyone said at once. "Take my car." The driver also said, "Am I seriously injured?" Li Xiaotian moved her muscles and bones like a pear blossom in the rain. She took a deep breath and said, "I think it should be fine. It's just a little painful. If it's painful, then you should go to the hospital to check." Tang Jing grabbed Li Xiaotian's hand and used his qi to check her injuries. He found that she only had a superficial wound and her elbow was scraped. Other than that, there was nothing serious. Chapter 885. It was already late, and the villa was lit up with bright lights. A group of people were sitting together watching TV. "Our station is reporting that a courageous act happened in Beijing this afternoon. A woman rushed into the street without a care for her own safety. She would rather be hit by a car to protect a child she did not know. She did a good deed without leaving her name, and quietly left. Fortunately, she was not injured. Next, please watch the latest report from our station's reporter." The host of the TV station reported with perfect pronunciation. The scene changed. It was the mother and child of the child involved, as well as other onlookers. Everyone was talking at once, describing the scene they saw, praising the woman who acted bravely for a just cause, admiring her actions. Finally, the host concluded, "Who said that the world is cold and there are no good people? This is the living Lei Feng of the new era, a practitioner of positive energy." As a mother, Mu Hongyan's attention was attracted by the news. She subconsciously hugged Nana tightly. Nana looked at the TV and said, "Mom, is that Sister Superman?" Mu Hongyan laughed involuntarily. "She is not Superman. She is a brave sister. Even if she is Superman, she is not as good as brother," Nana said in a childish voice. In her heart, Tang Jing was the most powerful person in the world. Looking at her incomparably serious expression, Mu Hongyan sighed in her heart. Yes, there is no one in the world more powerful than Tang Jing, at least to the mother and daughter. So when you grow up, you have to learn from this sister. You have to be a brave girl, understand? Mu Hongyan said patiently. Nana nodded heavily. Nana will become a brave child. This sister is so good. Mom always says that good people have good lives. Is this sister the same? Of course, so you have to be a good person. Yes, Nana will remember. The others also saw the news and thought at the same time that if they were in her shoes, they would definitely do the same. However, if an ordinary person dared to do this, it would require a lot of courage. They couldn't help but admire him from the bottom of their hearts. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps came from outside the door. Nana jumped down from Mu Hongyan's arms and ran to the door while shouting happily, "Brother is back!" Creak! The door opened, and two figures stood at the entrance. Everyone turned their heads to look, but in an instant, their eyes turned cold as they looked at Li Xiaotian beside Tang Jing in disbelief. "Wow, Sister Li Xiaotian, you're back too!" Nana was still a child, so she didn't know who Li Xiaotian was, so she greeted her obediently. Li Xiaotian's face also lit up with joy. Although she didn't remember Nana, but looking at Nana's appearance, she couldn't help but exclaim, "What a cute little girl!" She made a gesture to hug Nana, scaring Mu Hongyan so much that she turned pale with fright and screamed, "Don't!" Li Xiaotian was slightly startled and subconsciously stopped, looking blankly at Mu Hongyan. Mu Hongyan rushed to Nana and hugged her in her arms, as if she was afraid that something would happen to her. The other people's faces changed greatly as they looked at Li Xiaotian warily, ready to attack at any time. Li Xiaotian was stunned and looked at everyone at a loss. Tang Jing knew that there was a misunderstanding, so he quickly explained, "Everyone calm down, it's not what you think. He originally wanted to go out and get rid of Li Xiaotian, but now he brought back a living person, and this living person was obviously no different from a normal person, not a fool." This made them horrified. Seeing how calm Tang Jing was, the others heaved a sigh of relief, but they were still looking at Li Xiaotian with unfriendly expressions. Looking at everyone's reaction, Li Xiaotian was at a loss for a moment. She trembled like a child who had done something wrong. She said nervously, "Hello, everyone, my name is Li Xiaotian. I'm very happy to meet you." Tang Jing did not explain the situation at home to her beforehand, wanting to use this method to test her one last time. However, it was clear that Li Xiaotian had passed without the slightest flaw. As for bringing her home directly, Tang Jing had no choice. He couldn't just leave her outside, that was even worse. She was like a blank piece of paper right now, lacking a lot of common sense and unable to live alone. Furthermore, there were so many people watching her at home, watching her in full view of everyone, just to prevent trouble before it happened. All in all, Tang Jing was still on guard against her, just that he did it without leaving any traces. Marshall hated Li Xiaotian to the bone, stared at her with an ominous glint, gritted her teeth and said, "Why did you bring her back?" "I'll explain in a moment. Everyone sit down first." "Li Xiaotian, you sit too," Tang Jing said gently. Marshall sat down hatefully, but her gaze was firmly locked onto Li Xiaotian. Li Xiaotian cowered behind Tang Jing and muttered, "Her eyes are so scary." Nana, who was in Mu Hongyan's embrace, stared at Li Xiaotian with her big black eyes and said, "Sister Nana, don't be afraid. You have to be a brave girl, just like the girl who saved people on TV. Nana will also be a brave child." Li Xiaotian popped out from behind Tang Jing and said with a smile, "I'll listen to you. Big sister will be a brave girl. Yes, you still have to save people, just like Superman. I saved someone just now." The fear in Li Xiaotian's heart was melted by Nana's sincere smile, and she subconsciously said. However, she immediately remembered Tang Zheng's warning that she couldn't leave her name behind when she did a good deed, so she couldn't publicize it like this, so she stuck out her tongue and hurriedly stopped talking. Did the sun rise from the west? Everyone looked at Li Xiaotian in disbelief. It was good enough that she did not harm people, but she actually saved people. How was that possible? Moreover, she even stuck out her tongue. Was this kind of cute expression something she could make? Confused. Everyone was confused. Seeing everyone looking at her as if she was an alien, Li Xiaotian stuck out her tongue and said embarrassedly, "Tang Jing said to not leave your name behind when doing good deeds. I won't say that again. Not leaving your name behind when doing good deeds? Come on, have you ever done a good deed?" Everyone looked at each other, and really did not understand what was going on. Tang Jing coughed and motioned for everyone to sit down and talk. Then, he told the truth. Li Xiaotian lost her memory. She doesn't remember anything from the past, so don't make a fuss. Amnesia? How was that possible? This kind of thing could be understood if it happened to other people, but for it to happen to Li Xiaotian, it was inconceivable. She really saved people? Mu Hongyan asked. Tang Jing nodded and told her what happened in the afternoon. Li Xiaotian lowered her head in embarrassment and waved her hands. This is what I should do. That child is too dangerous. Mu Hongyan suddenly remembered the news she had just seen. Wasn't Tang Geng's description consistent with the news? Could it be that the living lei foam, superwoman, was Li Xiaotian? The person in the news was her? News? She's actually on the news? Tang Jing said in surprise. Mu Hongyan quickly repeated the contents of the news. Tang Jing nodded and confirmed that it was her. Immediately, everyone's emotions were complicated. Just a moment ago, they were praising this person's greatness and bravery. At this moment, they realized that this person was actually their enemy. Wu growled in disbelief. No, it can't be her. She can't be that kind-hearted. Li Xiaotian's face turned pale. She looked at Wu pitifully, and muttered in grievance. I really did it. Impossible! Li Xiaotian had targeted Tang Jing time and time again, and had almost killed Tang Jing and Lan Yu. How could she forgive him so easily? Lan Yu had been silently observing Wu the entire time. She had almost died at the hands of Li Xiaotian, so the anger in her heart was naturally not small. However, all she saw in Li Xiaotian's eyes was sincerity, without the slightest bit of cunning. She had seen countless people, and if one wanted to deceive her, it would be harder than ascending to the heavens. However, she did not notice any clues from beginning to end. She could not help but become suspicious. Could it be that Li Xiaotian had really lost his memories and his personality had changed? She could not be sure, but she believed in her son. Seeing Wu so agitated, she hurriedly advised. Wu, don't be agitated. Let's listen to what they have to say first. Li Xiaotian lowered his head like a child who had done something wrong, and said pitifully, Was I very bad in the past, that's why you all hate me so much? Humph, you're not just bad. You're bad to the bones, Wu said with an ashen face. Wu! Li Xiaotian covered his face, and buried his head in his knees as he cried. Eh? Everyone looked at Li Xiaotian as if they had seen a ghost. She was actually crying. One must know that Li Xiaotian was the holy maiden of Li Palace. In her entire life, other than crying when she was young, she had never cried when she grew up. But at this moment, she was actually crying in front of everyone. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. They really did not know how to describe this scene. Tang Jing had already seen this side of Li Xiaotian before, so he was not surprised and said, Don't cry. Your previous actions were indeed inappropriate, but that was all in the past. Li Xiaotian raised his head and looked at Tang Jing with a burning gaze. You're saying that what she said is true? Was I really a bad person in the past? Tang Jing was silent. This matter would be exposed sooner or later. It would be more useful to say it earlier than to hide it. Seeing that Tang Jing had tacitly agreed, Li Xiaotian's face turned ashen. His face was pale as he muttered to himself in distress. Why is it like this? How could I be a bad person in the past? I don't want to be a bad person. I want to be a good person. I want to be a good person who saves people. When I saved that child, I was very happy. I like that feeling. I don't want to be a bad person. Her nagging appearance was extremely painful and made people's hearts ache. But when they thought of her previous actions, they could not sympathize with her. Tang Jing patted her shoulder. For a moment, he did not know how to comfort her. Who would have thought that Li Xiaotian would take the opportunity to lean on his shoulder and tightly grasp his hand and say, I want to be a good person, not a bad person. Seeing her tightly grasp Tang Jing's hand and even intimately lean on his shoulder, everyone's expression became strange. How could a life and death enemy become so intimate in the blink of an eye? Moreover, after losing his memories, Why was Li Xiaotian so weak? Chapter 886. After Tang Jing comforted her for a while, Li Xiaotian finally calmed down and sent her back to her room to rest. When Tang Jing came downstairs, he saw that everyone was staring at him. Everyone, lower your voice. Tell me what you think. Tang Jing knew that everyone had yet to speak freely, so he spoke out all the questions in his heart. Why didn't you kill her? Wu looked at him resentfully and asked. I wanted to kill her. If she was still the Li Xiaotian of the past, then I would not hesitate to kill her. But when she woke up, she found that she had lost all her memories and was no longer the Li Xiaotian of the past. I killed a stranger. How could it be a stranger? She's still Li Xiaotian. Marshall was overbearing. You all know about her actions of saving people. Do you think that if it was the real Li Xiaotian, she would do that? So I feel that she is no longer the original Li Xiaotian. It's easy to change mountains and rivers, but it's hard to change one's nature. Tang Jing did not deny it, and only said, if she really becomes the Li Xiaotian of the past, then I will personally end her. Marshal Qi was obviously dissatisfied with Tang Dang's actions. Fang Shishir did not have much contact with Li Xiaotian, so she was kind-hearted and did not blame Tang Jing. Instead, she asked curiously, then do you think that she will become like before? Tang Jing was momentarily at a loss for words, because she was also unable to give a definite answer. Look, even you can't be sure. What if she becomes like before? So it's better to kill her as soon as possible. Marshall insisted. If you can't do it, I'll do it. No way. Tang Jing would not let Wu's hands be stained with innocent blood. He sighed and said earnestly, Wu, I understand your thoughts. Her past actions were indeed very bad, and I also hate her, but how can a person not be wrong? As the old saying goes, knowing one's wrongs and being able to change is the greatest. Furthermore, a prodigal son turning back is not worth changing. If she really becomes a good person, why should we kill a good person? You're eloquent. I can't win against you, Marshall said angrily. What do you think? Tang Jing turned his gaze to Lan Yu. She was the person involved and had the most right to speak. Lan Yu looked at his son with a burning gaze, and only after a long time did he say, Tang Jing, you are a kind-hearted person. I am very gratified. Since you think you can give her a second chance, then I agree. Although Lan Yu was a bit hesitant, seeing how resolute her son was, she agreed. Mu Hongyan nodded and said, Actually, she saved that innocent child today, which at least proves that she is a good person at this moment. Since she is a good person now, and also has a good heart, we can't kill her now. She was a person with a child, so she could especially understand how that child's family would feel if Li Xiaotian did not make a move today, so she wholeheartedly agreed with Tang Jing. Princess and took the lead and said, The Lord will give people a chance to turn over a new leaf. I believe in Tang Geng's vision. Emperor Fairy shrugged and said, An insignificant person, whether or not he dies, will not change the overall situation. Obviously, in her eyes, she still thought that Li Xiaotian's level was too low, so he was not a concern. Yi Dingdang saw that everyone was looking at him, so he raised his eyebrows and said, I agree with Marshall. Killing him will be neat and tidy. Immediately, Marshall felt that Yi Dingdang was a close friend. There were many similarities in their personalities, and they both hated evil. Tang Jing also hated evil, but Li Xiaotian's actions today had moved him, so he decided to give her another chance. Seeing that most people agreed with him, Tang Jing nodded and said, Then we will do this for now. However, Marshall and Dingdang's opinions are worth paying attention to. One should not have the heart to harm others, but one must guard against others. Letting her live in our house is to guard against her. I will keep an eye on her. If she dares to act blindly without thinking, I will definitely not show mercy, Marshall said with a murderous aura. Tang Jing did not oppose. Actually, as long as we guide her, if she really stands with us, then in the future when we deal with the Azure Dragon Palace, she might be able to play an unexpected role. Emperor Fairy said meaningfully. Tang Zheng's heart moved as he understood the Emperor Fairy's meaning. If Li Xiaotian was a spy, then it would be twice the result with half the effort. But there were too many variables, so they did not dare to take such a risk and let Li Xiaotian return. Moreover, they had already dealt with Rockefeller, so they wanted to point their swords at the Azure Dragon Palace. There was no need to take such a risk. No need. Tang Jing rejected. Emperor Fairy said without thinking. Then pretend I didn't say anything. Where's Tian Chanzi? How come I don't see him? Tang Jing looked around but did not find Tian Chanzi's figure. Master went to live somewhere else. He said that the smell of women here is too strong. Fang Shisher said with a smile. Tang Jing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Speaking of morals, if he wants to stay, I won't let him stay. In this villa, other than Tang Jing, everyone was a woman. Even the mosquitoes were female. The smell of cosmetics was indeed heavy. However, Tang Jing's 9-yang holy body was very suitable for this place. The next day, Tian Chanzi came early in the morning. When he heard about Li Xiaotian's situation, he did not have much of a reaction. Just like Emperor Fairy, he did not put Li Xiaotian in his eyes and thought that it was not related to the overall situation. Not long after, Yan Potion's call came. It turned out that the enemy's whereabouts were already known. Tang Jing was overjoyed. The Yan family did not disappoint him. They actually dug out the whereabouts of this group of people so quickly. Although everyone took the initiative to volunteer, in the end, only Tang Jing, Tian Chanzi, and Lan Yu participated in the operation. The others stayed at home. The enemy was not weak, and he did not know what moves they had. Therefore, it was better to be careful and not let too many people participate in the battle. Although the others also wanted to participate in the battle, they had no choice but to work hard at home and continue to cultivate. Lan Yu was very happy to see that Tang Jing actually agreed to her travel, and looked at him deeply. Although Tang Jing did not respond, she still felt that her relationship with him was improving. Perhaps in the near future, she would be able to hear him call her mother. The three of them arrived at the agreed location with Yan Patian. This was a wide street, and it was actually the embassy area. There were embassies of various countries in this place. Among them, the embassy of the Atlantic Empire was the largest and most conspicuous. The entrance was guarded by tall soldiers armed with live ammunition. Ordinary people would not be able to enter at all. Tang Jing faintly discovered that there were already many suspicious Huaxia faces on the streets, staring at the Atlantic Empire's embassy from afar or close by. Yan Patian brought his son and grandson and walked over and said, "We found these guys." "Where is it?" Yan Patian pointed to the Atlantic Empire's embassy. "They are hiding inside. These people are really cunning. I spent a lot of effort to dig them out. No one would have thought that they would openly hide inside the embassy. I have already sent people to monitor the embassy. They will not be able to escape." So those Huaxia faces were from the Yan family. Tang Jing suddenly realized that Rockefeller was indeed a group of cunning old foxes. Hiding in the embassy made Tang Jing hesitate and not dare to barge in. This was Rockefeller's little thought. However, they had still underestimated Tang Deng's determination. He had already prepared a case with the chief, so the other party definitely knew that these people were hiding in the embassy. However, the chief still tacitly agreed to Tang Jing's actions, which meant that they had a premonition of the situation and a corresponding countermeasure. Since that was the case, what else did Tang Jing have to worry about? Yan Patian did not know about this, and said worriedly, "If we were to barge into the embassy, then the nature of the matter would change. Shouldn't we be more cautious?" Tang Jing snorted coldly, and said disapprovingly, "If we miss this village, we won't be able to have this shop. We can't guard them outside the embassy for a lifetime. If we wait for a long time, they will find a way to slip away, so there's no time to lose. Are we really going to barge in? Then the impact," Yan Patian said worriedly. "Even if the sky falls, I will carry it. Moreover, even if we get rid of them, we won't be able to step down. The Atlantic Empire is very powerful, but I, am no longer the same as before. Back then, when they bombed our embassy, We didn't settle the score with them because our national strength was still weak. Now I want to follow their example. If they really don't know what's good for them, I don't mind letting them taste the feeling of the embassy being destroyed," Tang Jing said with righteous indignation. Tian Chanzi chuckled, patted Tang Zheng's shoulder, and praised. "Good boy, you have guts!" Yan Patian laughed bitterly in his heart. He looked at them speechlessly, but he did not hesitate to express his stance. "Then we will vote for them." The Yan family and Tang Jing advanced and retreated together. Even if Tang Jing wanted to attack a country, the Yan family would not hesitate to take the lead and follow. "How do we get in?" "Of course, if we can get rid of Rockefeller quietly, there is no need for us to make everyone know about it and make too much of a fuss. Therefore, we will sneak in secretly." Tang Jing pondered for a moment before deciding. "That means we can't bring too many people in, and the enemy definitely has a lot of people. Do we have a chance of winning?" Yan Patian asked worriedly. "I've fought with Nicholas before, so I know his background, so I think our chances of winning are very high," Tang Jing said. "But everyone still has to take care of themselves. After we deal with them, we still have to retreat unscathed. Don't worry, we can control the people outside at any time. If there really is too much danger, we can order the people outside to rush in and help at any time. At most, we can turn the world upside down," Yan Patian said indifferently. Obviously, he was also a daring person. If he really made up his mind to do it, he wouldn't have too many worries. The few of them looked at each other and nodded. In order to avoid any trouble, they didn't even wait until it was dark and immediately took action. So, the few of them turned into a few afterimages and flipped over the tall walls of the embassy. They did not trigger the alarm and even directly avoided the surveillance and patrolling soldiers. As for where exactly Rockefeller was hiding in the embassy, they did not know for the time being, but the ambassador definitely knew, so they wanted to kidnap him. This kind of thing that could easily cause international disputes was like child's play to them, and they didn't care at all. Chapter 887. Who are you? How dare you trespass into the Atlantic Empire's embassy? The ambassador scolded in fluent Huaxia. Tang Jing rushed over like a ferocious tiger, grabbing at the opponent. Whoosh! The ambassador actually retreated at lightning speed. It was definitely not the reaction speed of an ordinary person. "Huh! You actually dodged it. Let's see how long you can hide." Tang Jing was as fast as lightning. This time, the other party didn't even have time to react before falling into Tang Jing's hands. "What are you doing?" The ambassador scolded with a red face. Tang Jing was too lazy to talk nonsense with him. He directly grabbed his neck and asked fiercely, "Where are the Rockefeller people hiding?" The ambassador's eyes flashed with a trace of undetectable panic. If Tang Jing was a bit further away, he definitely wouldn't have noticed it. But now that the two of them were so close, not a single change in the ambassador could escape Tang Jing's sharp eyes. "He definitely knows," Tang Jing judged. "I don't know what you're talking about. This is the embassy, the territory of the Atlantic Empire. You are invading. You have to take responsibility," the ambassador roared. Tang Jing sneered. "You want to use your voice to attract others to save you? I advise you to give up on that idea. As for the bullshit Western Empire's territory, so what if I'm here? You're not a gentleman. You're a robber, a terrorist. F***ck, your Atlantic Empire calls whoever you don't like a terrorist. Are you used to it? Let me tell you, if you don't tell the truth, don't even think about walking out of this door." Tang Jing wasn't a gentleman at all. He tightened his grip. "I won't say it even if you beat me to death." The ambassador would rather die than submit. "Is that so? Since you want to die, then I'll fulfill your wish." Tang Jing had the soul search technique. It was too easy to dig out the secrets from the ambassador. "Just use the soul search technique. Why are you wasting time with him?" Tian Chanzi impatiently urged. Tang Jing immediately cast the technique, but suddenly his hand loosened. The ambassador turned into a cloud of black smoke and then into a large bat. He escaped from Tang Zheng's hands and flapped his wings to fly out the door. Blood Clan! Several people cried out in alarm. Who would have thought that even the ambassador was a vampire? The Atlantic Empire had actually been infiltrated by vampires to such an extent that even a high-ranking official was no exception. Don't even think about leaving! Tang Deng's aura skyrocketed. When he faked his death, he lost the War Soul Sword and it fell into the hands of the Blood Clan. This time, not only did he want to exterminate the Blood Clan, he also wanted to retrieve the War Soul Sword. Therefore, how could he allow the other party to escape? He stretched out his hand and used the sky-swallowing technique. The powerful suction force immediately caused the airflow in the room to become chaotic. The fleeing figure of the ambassador suddenly stopped, and then he screamed as he was sucked back into Tang Ding's palm. Run? Let's see how you can escape. Looking at the big bat in his hand, Tang Jing felt disgusted and grabbed its head without hesitation. In an instant, Tang Jing searched through all the information in the ambassador's mind. However, the other party was a vampire, and the damage to his brain was immediately healed. Thus, he wasn't stupid and roared at the top of his lungs. You're challenging Rockefeller and provoking the Atlantic Empire. You'll die miserably, and your country will be consigned to eternal damnation. You're still boasting shamelessly when you're about to die. Tang Jing coldly berated as the suction force in his palm increased. Swoosh! With a flash of black light, the ambassador disappeared from Tang Jing's palm and was sucked in. This was the first time the others had seen this scene. They all stared curiously and asked, Where did he go? I don't know, but he's definitely dead. Tang Jing shook his head. I already know where Rockefeller is hiding. Let's end this quickly. Tian Chanzi had long since sealed the room, so no matter how shrill and loud the ambassador's voice was, it couldn't be transmitted out. The soldiers outside didn't know that the ambassador no longer existed. When Tang Jing and the others opened the door and walked out, the other party was obviously stunned. Tang Jing moved like lightning, and the other party immediately fainted on the ground. Then, the group went straight for their target. The basement was extremely wide and huge. It was very similar to the basement under the Rockefeller family's castle in the Atlantic Empire, except that it was a smaller version. When Tang Jing and the others broke in, they saw a scene that made them burn with anger. There were actually many corpses of young girls in the basement. The blood on their bodies had been sucked dry, and they looked like dried corpses. Some of them weren't dead yet, but the vampires were biting their throats and sucking their blood. They were still struggling, but it was all in vain. Their blood was rapidly flowing out, and their faces were as pale as paper. This was a demon's den. Beasts! Tang Zheng roared. Looking at their faces, these women were all Huaxia people. This group of vampires actually sucked the blood of Huaxia people. In the past, I've always heard that women often went missing in Sanlitun, but we couldn't find any clues. I'm afraid they were brought here by this group of beasts, Yan Luan said with red eyes. That bar street was a place where many foreigners lingered, and many Huaxia women were the most enthusiastic about these foreigners. There were even many who wanted to hook up with these foreigners. They probably never dreamed that such a cruel scene would be waiting for them. Let's go on a killing spree and kill all of these bastards! Tang Jing roared. He was extremely angry. He took the lead and charged forward. A vampire bared his teeth, revealing 2 long fangs. Die! Tang Zheng roared. He grabbed the other party's body like lightning and tore it in half. Although vampires had strong healing abilities, they were unable to recover from this degree of injury and died immediately. The other people's attacks were also very sharp, especially Lan Yu. Seeing the other party kill women like this, she was seething with anger. Pun! She swept out her palm and hit a head. Like a ripe watermelon, it immediately exploded into a bloody mist. Roar, roar! A few werewolves also jumped out and quickly transformed. Their large bodies pounced over, their sharp claws clawing at the people. They didn't dodge at all, choosing to meet force with force. Apart from Yan Luyun, everyone here was at least a master-level martial artist, so they weren't afraid at all when facing these vampires and werewolves. On the contrary, because of their anger, their attacks were especially clean, all of them aiming to kill in one blow. In an instant, the ground was littered with the corpses of many vampires and werewolves, and most of them were incomplete. The other women who were lucky enough to survive stared blankly at this scene. They originally thought that they were going to die, but they didn't expect that there would be a glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel, and a group of their compatriots would appear. These compatriots were very powerful and efficient. These monsters weren't their match at all. However, their brains had already lost the ability to think, and they could only stare blankly at the tragic battle. Tang Jing was in the mood to kill, and charged into the crowd as if there was no one around. After a few rounds, more than 10 vampires and werewolves had already fallen at his feet. However, after searching through the crowd, he couldn't find Nicholas's figure. Impossible, the information in the ambassador's mind indicated that Nicholas was in the basement. He widened his eyes and searched through the crowd, but he still couldn't find any trace of him. The vampires and werewolves finally knew that they were no match for this group of Huaxia people. Some of the smarter ones immediately fled toward the exit. "Xiao Bai, guard the exit! Don't let anyone escape!" Tang Zheng roared. Xiao Bai leaped and floated in the air above the exit. He saw a werewolf and a vampire rushing over. Immediately, with a boom, he spat out a ball of flame. The two fellows immediately turned into 2 balls of flame and fled in all directions. However, after a few leaps, they fell to the ground motionlessly and were burned to ashes. One man guarding the pass, 10,000 men couldn't get through. No one could escape from the exit. Xiao Bai was lazy. These fellows couldn't arouse his interest at all. The disparity in strength was too great. Looking at Xiao Bai's smug look, Tang Jing couldn't laugh. These werewolves and vampires deserved to die, and he didn't pity them at all. However, what made him distressed was that Nicholas had disappeared, and the War Soul Sword was nowhere to be found. Damn it, the War Soul Sword must be in Nicholas's hands. I must find him and eliminate him. Another werewolf rushed over. Tang Jing grabbed his huge head. The other party was very tall and tried to struggle, but found that he couldn't move at all. Tang Jing hurriedly used the soul-searching technique. Werewolves were not like vampires and could heal their injuries, so the werewolf's struggle immediately stopped, and he became stupid. Bang! After Tang Jing finished using the soul-searching technique, he punched the werewolf's chest. The werewolf's chest quickly caved in, and his back suddenly swelled up. He exploded into a bloody mist and fell to the ground. Tang Jing's gaze turned and stared at a wall in the basement. He rushed over like an arrow, and his huge fist was like a cannonball, bombarding the wall. Boom! Stone fragments flew, and the wall trembled violently, revealing a big hole. This punch didn't penetrate the wall, but revealed the steel plate behind the stone. "There's a door behind here!" Tang Jing roared, and the other's attention was immediately attracted. "Nicholas is behind here. I'll do it!" Tian Chanzi channeled his power and fiercely stomped down. Bang bang, the floor cracked inch by inch, like a spider web. "Hey!" Tian Chanzi roared. His fists were like angry dragons emerging from the sea, hitting the steel plate. Bang bang, the steel plate shook violently, and 2 black spots appeared. Thin cracks spread out from the black spots, and the cracks quickly expanded, covering the steel plate in an instant. Tian Chanzi raised his mouth and gently blew a breath. This breath seemed to be the last straw that broke the camel's back. Crash! The steel plate shattered into palm-sized pieces that clattered to the ground, revealing an empty room behind it. This room was even smaller and more secretive. At this moment, the room was already empty. There were surveillance cameras in the room, and everything in the basement outside could be clearly seen. There was no doubt that Nicholas must have seen the battle outside through the surveillance cameras. After weighing the pros and cons, he knew that he was no match for them, so he ran away. Why does this embassy have so many basements? There are even tunnels? Tang Jing looked at the half-open door in front of him with an ashen face and said hatefully. The battle outside also came to an end. All the werewolves and vampires were killed, and only the lucky woman was left. Chase! Tang Jing, without hesitation, chased after him. Chapter 888. Behind the door was a long passageway. After they entered, there was a circulation of air. Clearly, there was an exit on the other side. Tang Jing gave chase while dialing Ding Liang's number. The government must have been paying attention to their movements. Perhaps they were already making the necessary preparations. If that was the case, why not give them a big gift and let them avoid the Atlantic Empire's accusations? After all, they would cause a serious diplomatic disturbance if they barged into the embassy. Without a doubt, the dirty things in the basement were the best excuse to retaliate. It was just a matter of whether the government dared to break into the embassy. He roughly described what he saw and told Ding Liang to report it to the higher-ups. This was not something Ding Liang could decide. As for what the higher-ups would do, he did not worry. His main focus was on the Rockefeller family. Not long after, a door appeared in front of them. Behind the door was a large warehouse filled with all kinds of vegetables. Tang Jing looked back. The door was already closed and merged with the wall. He could not sense that there was another world behind the wall. This group of people was really cunning. They were obviously walking on a plank road, but they were secretly walking on a different path. This secret passage actually led to a warehouse. What was this place? There was another door in the warehouse. Tang Jing pushed it open without hesitation. A burst of smoke and oil rushed into their nostrils. The noise was like a tidal wave. Everyone looked at the scene in front of them in disbelief. This was actually a huge kitchen, and it was bustling with activity. Everyone was busy, and there were all kinds of delicious dishes in the pot. "Where are they?" Tang Jing growled. The chefs looked at the group of uninvited guests with puzzled faces. "Did you see a few Westerners leave?" Tang Jing hurriedly asked. Everyone shook their heads and said they did not know. Suddenly, they were dumbfounded. The tunnel led here, how could they not see it? No, they must have been in disguise to escape the eyes of these chefs who were working hard. "Come, let's go out and take a look." Tang Jing did not give up. He rushed out of the kitchen with the others. Outside was a banquet hall. A wedding was being held. The bride and groom were holding the ceremony under the witness of all the guests. Tang Jing looked up and glanced around. There were many foreign faces in this wedding. Could these be Rockefeller's men? Tang Jing's heart moved, and he directly picked up the nearest foreigner and asked, "Are you Rockefeller's people?" The other party looked at him blankly, and then immediately became angry. Unexpectedly, he scolded him in fluent Huaxiao language. "Who are you? What do you want?" Tang Jing raised his eyebrows. This person clearly wasn't very strong. Could it be that he wasn't one of Rockefeller's men? His gaze subconsciously swept towards the wedding stage. The groom was actually a foreign face, and the first few tables were also filled with foreigners. Tang Jing immediately realized that this was a multinational couple. The foreign faces among the guests were not necessarily Rockefeller's people. This is bad. Tang Jing was secretly anxious. According to his speculation, he was not far from Rockefeller. If he let him go like this, it would be harder to deal with him in the future. He could not let go of this opportunity. The arrival of these uninvited guests immediately caused the wedding scene to fall into silence. Especially when Tang Jing rudely mentioned the guests' behavior, it made the people around him exclaim. In an instant, everyone looked in their direction, pointing and whispering to each other. Tang Jing acted as if he didn't see it. Although he disturbed the wedding of the couple, he had no choice. He cupped his fist and gestured to the crowd, saying, "Sorry for the disturbance. Did anyone see any suspicious people from the Atlantic Empire? Who are you? Who let you barge in? Hurry up and get him out." The bride's mother flew into a rage and rushed over like a swarm of bees. She finally found a foreign rich husband and could hold her head high among her neighbors. How could she allow an outsider to ruin the wedding? Who is the suspicious person? I'm telling you, you are the most suspicious person. Get out of here right now. Her face was red and she scolded arrogantly. Tang Jing turned a deaf ear. His eyes swept through the crowd like a scanner. However, there were too many Western faces. For a moment, he couldn't distinguish who was from the Rockefeller family. As for Nicola's face, because there were too many people, he didn't see it. Seeing that Tang Jing didn't pay attention to her, the middle-aged woman shouted, "Security, hurry up and get these people out." Tang Jing had an intuition that Rockefeller's people were among these people because they couldn't have escaped so quickly. Tang Jing gestured to the others, and they all understood. In a flash, they shuttled through the banquet, and stared at the Western faces with their fiery eyes. "What are you doing? Hurry up and get out!" Someone shouted. The guests rushed over like a swarm of bees to stop them. The scene suddenly fell into chaos. Tang Jing hurriedly channeled his energy. The others couldn't get close at all. However, it couldn't go on like this. Suddenly, Tang Jing saw a familiar figure from the corner of his eyes. He shouted, "Nicola!" As soon as his voice fell, a figure ran outside. "Stop!" Tang Jing leapt up like a falcon, leaping over the heads of the crowd, pouncing towards that figure. Whoosh! Whoosh! However, several cold lights shot from all directions and went straight for Tang Deng's vital parts. There really is an accomplice. Tang Jing didn't panic. He hurriedly took out the holy armor shield. With a flash of light, dazzling sparks flew from the holy armor shield. Tang Jing wasn't hurt at all. Everyone saw this scene, and immediately screams sounded everywhere. The crowd ran in all directions, and the situation became even more chaotic. Tian Chanzi and the others didn't stay idle. They quickly locked on to the enemy who had just thrown the weapon and attacked quickly and accurately. Bang! 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 Several balls of blood exploded. Immediately, the screams became even more intense. Some people couldn't tell the direction and directly bumped into them. The vampires were mixed in. With a flash of cold light, they directly attacked the vital parts of the people. A group of beasts. "You want to sneak attack? Go to hell!" Heaven Monk roared. With a wave of his finger, the sword she swept out, pu. The sword she passed through the head of one of the Blood Clan, and before the remaining force disappeared, it shot into the chest of another person, causing both of them to immediately fall to the ground and die. Roar! 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 A series of roars sounded. The werewolves quickly transformed. They were tall and ferocious. Several ordinary people stood in front of them. They waved their claws and slapped at them. Bang! One of them flew out into the distance. "Beast, how dare you hurt people!" Lan Yu shouted. Her figure flashed like a dancing butterfly as she spun and flew up. With a sweep of her leg, she kicked a werewolf's head. The head was separated from the body. It smashed into the wall and broke into pieces. The attacks of the three members of the Yen family were also very strong. They had fought with the werewolves and vampires before, so they knew their strength. Many enemies fell wherever they went. The banquet hall became a scene of carnage. It was a mess. Corpses were everywhere, and the smell of blood filled the air. The ordinary guests had already rushed out screaming, but some who were not afraid of death hid at the door and peeked. They were really good at watching. The funniest thing was that the groom abandoned the bride and ran faster than anyone else. He was tall and had long legs. He squeezed out of the door in a few steps, leaving only the screaming bride. Tang Jing locked onto his target. Seeing that Nicholas wanted to blend into the crowd and rush out, he leaped into the air and pointed at his back. Hearing the sound behind him, Nicholas's face turned pale. He had really met his Waterloo this time. He originally thought that he could capture Tang Jing easily. He even had Song Yu, who knew him well. He also watched as Tang Jing died. But the strange thing was that he actually came back to life. Without a doubt, he must have faked his death and fooled him. This was a great humiliation, and it made him fly into a rage. Later, he found that the Japanese did not gain any benefits, and they were killed until they threw away their helmets and armor, and almost all of them were wiped out. Chapter 889. He had finally found the War Soul's sword. Seeing the War Soul's sword thrusting towards him, Tang Jing sneered. Nicholas, do you really think that you can control the War Soul's sword in your hands? Sword spirit! With a thought from Tang Jing, the sword spirit activated, causing the War Soul's sword to buzz and tremble, flying out of Nicholas's hands. Nicholas did not expect this scene and could not help but turn pale with fright. He stared dumbfoundedly at the flying War Soul's sword. How could this be? Tang Jing grabbed the War Soul's sword and laughed playfully. Is my sword something that anyone can take away? Shwa! With that, he slashed at his opponent. Nicholas hurriedly retreated, but Tang Jing was even faster, following him like a shadow, the tip of the sword pointed straight at his forehead. Damned fellow! Nicholas quickly transformed, and a huge cloak covered his body. With a whoosh, the cloak covered the sky and swept towards the War Soul's sword. Puff! The War Soul's sword seemed to be unstoppable as it cut open a crack in the cloak and then drove straight in. Nicholas was so scared that his soul almost left his body. He never thought that the power of the War Soul's sword would be so great. It was much more powerful than when he first saw it in the castle. Is almost equal to him, however, he did not know that the War Soul's sword had already become a sacred artifact, so its power was naturally incomparable. Moreover, Tang Jing's cultivation had also risen to the 7th stage of the Jindan stage, so the power of his sword was naturally even greater. Nicholas retreated in panic, but he was still a step too late. The War Soul's sword had opened a huge wound on his body, causing blood to flow out. However, because of the Striga's special physique, the blood instantly stopped flowing. He glared at Tang Jing ferociously and hysterically said, I really regret letting you escape. Tang Jing snorted and sneered. I won't make the same mistake. This time, you won't be able to escape even if you have wings. You are no match for me, Nicholas said in a loud voice. Tang Jing had to admit that Nicholas's strength was equivalent to the 9th stage of the Jindan stage, and was even stronger than Tang Jing. The reason why he was able to injure his opponent with this move was mainly because it was a surprise attack. If he wanted to truly take Nicholas's life, it would not be that easy. If he can't, then do you think I'm just a decoration? Tian Chanzi's voice suddenly sounded behind Nicholas. Nicholas's expression suddenly changed as he dodged to the side in a sorry state. He had seen Tian Chanzi's skills on the monitor and knew that he was definitely his opponent. Otherwise, he would not have been so anxious to escape. What he feared most was Tian Chanzi. He looked at Heaven Monk with a complicated expression and asked hoarsely, Who exactly are you? Tian Chanzi said murderingly. Tian Chanzi said murderingly. Tian Chanzi said. Nicholas's eyelids twitched as he said, Did you and Tang Jing join hands to kill my son? To deal with that little bat, there's no need for me to do anything. Tang Jing alone is enough. Tian Chanzi said disdainfully. However, to deal with an old bat like you, it seems that I have no choice but to do something. Although Nicholas was burning with anger, he secretly glanced at the exit from the corner of his eyes, obviously waiting for an opportunity to escape. Tian Chanzi saw through his thoughts and said disdainfully, If I let you escape in front of me, then what about my reputation? After saying this, he pointed his finger at Nicholas. Nicholas hurriedly dodged, but Tian Chanzi's aura was firmly locked onto him. No matter how he struggled, it was futile. Pooh! The sword she penetrated his chest and back, and blood dyed his cloak red. He staggered back, but it was not fatal. After all, his self-healing ability was very heaven-defying. Although this injury was not light, he was still able to heal in a few breaths. His recovery speed is faster than other vampires. This kind of attack can't hurt him. Tang Jing reminded loudly, and once again raised his sword to attack. Being attacked from the front and back, and all of them were experts, especially Tian Chanzi. Nicholas was not a match for him at all, so he did not dare to confront him. He could only turn around and face Tang Jing. Bang, bang, bang! In an instant, the two had already exchanged dozens of moves. They were as fast as lightning, using speed to fight speed, using strength to overcome strength. Tang Jing's true energy was surging, but he was not injured. Instead, his fighting spirit was high. Fighting with experts of this level could really let him display his full strength and increase his actual combat experience. Let's end this quickly. Seeing that Tian Chanzi seemed to intend to be a spectator and let Tang Jing practice, Tang Jing also wanted to practice, but after all, there were too many people here, and it would affect too much. Therefore, after exchanging more than 100 moves with his opponent, he shouted loudly. Tian Chanzi shrugged, and with a flick of his finger, 5 rays of sword she shot out. Pooh! Nicholas's body trembled, and 5 holes appeared on his body, including his heart. His movements slowed down, and he hurriedly circulated his energy to heal, but the healing speed could not keep up with the speed of Tian Chanzi's attack. Tian Chanzi flicked his finger again, and his body really became riddled with holes, and blood flowed to the ground. He howled in pain. He was furious, but there was nothing he could do. This was a crushing defeat of absolute strength. Even if he had the ability to heal, it would be of no help. Tang Jing could not help but sigh. This was the fighting strength of a 9th grade Yuanying, and he was still far from it. Not only did he suck human blood, but he had also cruelly killed countless innocent people, especially when he tried to activate the mountain river blood sacrifice array on Sky Mountain. This made Tang Jing feel no pity for him. Seeing Tang Jing directly refuse, number 2 flew into a rage and said, "Are you going against the country? Don't put a hat on me, I won't fall for it." Tang Jing retorted, "You can't represent the country." Number 2 was originally a martial artist, so how could he be as eloquent as Tang Jing? His face flushed red, and he said angrily, "I said you can't kill him, so you can't kill him." Whoosh! A fist directly flew towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing's hands were not empty, and he kicked out. Bang! A powerful force came from the soles of his feet. If not for the fact that he had cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell, his bones would have been broken. "You are so ruthless!" Tang Jing flew into a rage, but at the same time, he was secretly shocked. His opponent's strength was beyond his imagination. He was actually stronger than him. Although it was only a simple contact, Tang Jing had already made a general judgment. This palace expert was indeed worthy of his reputation. Number 2's first attack missed, so he launched another series of attacks. Creak, creak! All of a sudden, Xiao Bai appeared out of nowhere. He opened his mouth wide and a beam of fire shot up into the sky. Ah dash! Number 2 turned pale with fright and retreated in a panic. He didn't expect there to be a fire attack. A burnt smell slowly filled the air. His hair and eyebrows were burnt by the fire, and he was in an extremely sorry state. Number 2 had never experienced such a thing before. He glared at the complacent Xiao Bai who was standing on Tang Jing's shoulder and shouted angrily, "Bastard, you can even spit fire, I'm going to roast you!" Xiao Bai could understand human language, and immediately flew into a rage. He bared his teeth at number 2, and spat out small flames at the side of his mouth, as if he could taste the taste of roasted pig again at any time. Tang Jing squinted his eyes, a cold light flashed, and asked, "You want to roast my Xiao Bai? So what if I roast it? It's just a demonic beast," Number 2 said disdainfully. To Tang Jing, Xiao Bai was not only a demonic beast, but also the holy beast of the witch clan. In addition, after interacting with each other day and night, Xiao Bai was more like a part of his life, a relative. Hearing Number 2's shameless words, how could Tang Jing not be angry? Ding Lian had been undercover for many years, and was good at observing people's expressions. Seeing Tang Geng's reaction, he knew something was wrong. He hurriedly advised, "Calm down, Tang Jing, we are just passing on orders from above. We have no other choice. Please understand, Nicholas is indeed more valuable alive than dead." Chapter 890. 5 words, simple and powerful, like a strange rock with distinct edges and corners, exuding an unyielding aura. Ding Liang and number 2 did not expect Tang Jing to be so stubborn. Even Nicholas was shocked. He originally thought that if the officials came, he would be able to escape this calamity. As long as he returned to the Atlantic Empire, he would use the power of the country to deal with Hua Xia. He was confident that he had many ways to make this ancient country suffer at the national level. But he did not expect Tang Jing to be so stubborn, giving him an ominous premonition. Tang Jing, don't be impulsive, Ding Liang continued to persuade, but before he could finish, his eyes widened as he watched in disbelief as Tang Jing actually made a move. Yes, Tang Jing, in order to avoid any more trouble, might as well directly take action. How dare you stop! Number 2 roared again and jumped up to the roof, jumping from the chandelier above and pouncing towards Tang Jing. Tang Jing acted as if he did not see. With so many people, if they could not stop a palace expert, then he might as well buy a piece of tofu and knock himself to death. Thus, with a turn of his hand, the battle soul's sword also followed suit. Pooh! Nicholas watched in disbelief as the sword edge cut open his throat, blood flowing out. The sword edge's momentum was not reduced, directly cutting off his neck. The huge head directly flew out. He did not even have time to scream, it was already gone. Even if Nicholas had an immortal body, there was nothing he could do in this situation. Moreover, Tang Jing did not give up just in case. With the point of his finger, a ball of true fire flew out and wrapped around Nicholas's head and body. Boom! As if he had been doused in gasoline, Nicholas turned into 2 balls of raging fire. Number 2 was intercepted by Tian Chanzi in midair. When Tian Chanzi made his move, his attack was like an avalanche. Bang! Number 2's chest was hit by a palm. Like a kite with a broken string, he broke the chandelier on the roof and directly smashed into the rostrum. Pooh! Spurting out a mouthful of blood, his aura weakened to the extreme. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Clutching his chest, he looked at Tian Chanzi in disbelief. You! Wah! Before he could finish his words, he spurted another mouthful of blood. He had heard that Tian Chanzi's cultivation was amazing, but he didn't expect the gap between him and Tian Chanzi to be so big. This was simply a natural chasm that couldn't be crossed. Tian Chanzi looked at him coldly and said, You want to hurt Tang Jing? Do you really think I'm just a decoration? Number 2 was on the verge of death and had no strength to refute. In addition to anger, there was also deep despair in his eyes. As an expert, what could be more depressing than being defeated so easily by someone else? Seeing Tian Chanzi walking towards him step by step, his murderous aura enveloping him, Number 2's mind trembled, but he had no power to resist at all. He was like a fish on the chopping board, waiting to be slaughtered. He regretted it immensely. How could he be so reckless? Before he left, the chief had repeatedly warned him not to act on impulse and to plan carefully before acting. But when it came to it, he forgot all of this. In the end, he was still a simple-minded martial artist who didn't see the current situation clearly. Ding Liang was stunned. The imperial expert who was shocking in his eyes couldn't even withstand a single blow. Only then did he experience Tang Deng's power again. He couldn't just watch the situation worsen. Thus, he suppressed the fear in his heart with great difficulty and stood in front of Number 2. His face was uglier than if he had eaten yellow lotus. He said in a trembling voice, Don't hurt him. Otherwise, things will really worsen and become serious. After confirming that Nicholas had been burned to ashes, Tang Jing turned his head and looked at Number 2 and Ding Liang with a mocking expression. Since Number 2 couldn't see the situation clearly, then he would help him see it clearly. Now Number 2 should know who was in charge here and who was the commander. Ding Liang, this time I'll give you face and let him go. In the future, don't be so arrogant in front of me. Don't think that you can be so arrogant just because you're an imperial expert. Let me tell you, in front of me, you're nothing, Tang Jing said lightly. His tone was very calm, but the strong self-confidence and murderous intent revealed made people's hearts beat like drums. Number 2 couldn't say a word to refute. His face turned from white to red, and he couldn't wait to find a hole to hide in. Whether I kill Nicholas or not, that's my business. Because he's my captive. No one can tell me what to do. You can take this back. Tang Jing continued. Ding Liang and number two's eyelids twitched. Too arrogant. Not only did he not put them in his eyes, but he also didn't put the people behind them in his eyes. Tang Jing wasn't really so arrogant and conceited, but the other side repeatedly believed that his will was right and repeatedly provoked Tang Gang's actions. That was why he had no choice but to make his position clear. Moreover, now he had the strength to make his position clear. If he didn't say anything, then he would only be seen as weak. Number two was angry but didn't dare to say anything. He thought to himself that he would definitely pass on these words and let the chief know how arrogant he was. He definitely wouldn't have a good ending. Ding Liang sighed inwardly. With Tang Zhang's current strength, it wouldn't be easy for the government to deal with him. He was already extremely benevolent to cooperate with the government like this. One had to know that Rockefeller's influence in the West was huge. They didn't care about the government at all, and many times even suppressed them secretly. What president? They didn't dare to put on airs in front of Nicholas. It was just that Nicholas never dreamed that he would meet his Waterloo in Huaxia, and that he would fall and be reduced to ashes. If the government understood the situation clearly, they might be able to get along well with Tang Jing, mutually beneficial and win-win situations. If they didn't understand the situation clearly and view Tang Jing as their enemy, then the situation might get out of control, and it wouldn't be beneficial to anyone. Ding Liang had been in the Atlantic Empire all year round, so he was very clear about this. He made up his mind to give some suggestions when he returned, so as to prevent the situation from falling into chaos because of number two's one-sided words. Let's go. Tang Jing led the crowd away without looking back, leaving behind a scene of devastation. Naturally, they would be the ones to clean up the mess. The few of them walked through a few streets before stopping. Tang Jing asked curiously, "This time, we didn't find anyone from the island nation. Where are they?" Yan Patian seemed to have awoken from a dream, and regained his senses from the situation just now. Just now, he was also shocked by Tang Deng's domineering aura. Even though he was the head of the Yan clan, he didn't dare to disrespect the authorities like this. He sighed in his heart. The new generation overtook the old, and the old died on the beach. He really couldn't compare to Tang Jing. The people of the island nation are more cunning than Rockefeller's people, and they know our habits better, so we haven't found them yet. Yan Patian said regretfully. Tang Jing pondered for a moment, then said, "Could they also be in the island nation's embassy in China?" "No," Yan Patian immediately denied. "When we first discovered Rockefeller's traces, we also had this suspicion, so we specially sent people to the island nation's embassy in China to spy on them. We can confirm that they are not hiding inside." Tang Jing frowned, and said, "Since they are not in the embassy, then where are they?" The capital was not big, but it was not small either. If a group of foreigners wanted to hide without a trace, it would definitely not be an easy thing to do. Find them. Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we have to find them, Tang Jing said coldly. "Don't worry, as long as they don't leave Huaxia, they will definitely reveal themselves." Yan Patian was full of confidence. After hesitating for a moment, Tang Jing asked again, "Is there any movement from the imperial city?" Yan Patian glanced at his son and grandson, waved his hand, indicating for them to walk further away. The matter of the 5-clawed golden dragon was a secret. He had promised not to tell anyone, including his family. Yan Qishan and Yan Luyun looked at them with complicated expressions. Without saying a word, they obediently retreated into the distance. Only then did Yan Patian say in a low voice, "The officials have already sent soldiers to surround the imperial city so tightly that not even a mosquito can penetrate it. That area was originally a tourist area, but now it's completely sealed off." Tang Jing could understand, and said, "Then it looks like the officials are going to take action." The officials had long suspected, so they naturally wouldn't sit idly by. Yen Patian asked worriedly. Then, will the golden dragon be affected? Don't worry, it won't have any effect. Even if they dig 3 feet into the ground, they can do it. As long as they struggle for a long time and there is no result, they will naturally not continue. Tang Zheng was not worried. Seeing that he was so confident, Yen Patian put his worried heart back into his stomach and continued. The people of the capital are in an uproar over what they have seen and heard in the past few days. The dragon's roar can still be used as an excuse, but the appearance of the Striga and the werewolf has caused the people to panic, especially when someone directly took a video and spread it online, causing a lot of shock and panic. When Rockefeller kidnapped the people around Tangjing, he did everything he could. With great fanfare, it had indeed caused quite a bit of an impact. How did the authorities deal with it? They deleted the relevant content in time and have been trying their best to refute the rumors, saying that this is a special effect for a movie. Tang Jing laughed involuntarily. This was the usual style of the officials, but other than that, there was no other way that was more effective. Otherwise, if the existence of the Strige and the werewolf were to be announced, it would definitely cause panic and social unrest. The reason why Rockefeller chose to act in such a public manner was probably because he had such vicious thoughts. Although the people would still suspect and guess, as long as they guided the general direction, there wouldn't be any big problems. The authorities were very experienced in this area, so Tang Jing wasn't worried. However, paper would not be able to wrap up the fire. In the future, when more cultivators appeared, or when the prophesied return of the demon clan's large army, or when the world ended, the existence of cultivators would no longer be a secret, and the people would eventually know. At that time, the world's structure would undergo an earth-shattering change. No matter what the direction of the world was, the key was to resolve the crisis in front of them. The appearance of the island nation made Tang Jing extremely vigilant, because the island nation was definitely related to the 100 Transformations Star-Lord. Chapter 891. Ding Liang and Number 2 stood in front of the bureau chief in fear and trepidation. Number 1 and Number 3 also stood beside them. Ding Liang reported his encounter with Tang Jing in detail. The bureau chief's face was as dark as water. Number 1 and Number 3 could no longer suppress the anger in their hearts. Especially when they saw the battered and heavily injured Number 2, they couldn't wait to find Tang Jing and settle the score. Ding Liang nervously finished his report and stood respectfully at the side, not daring to say another word. The bureau chief snorted and said, "He's actually this arrogant?" Ding Liang's throat was dry as he said with fear, "He's a young man after all, and he's in the right, so it's inevitable. After all, he was an old member of the National Security Bureau, and was also saved by Tang Jing from the Atlantic Empire. Naturally, he was grateful to Tang Jing, so he didn't forget to speak up for him. However, Number 2 angrily added fuel to the fire. He doesn't even care about the bureau chief. Preposterous! Number 1 shouted. Bureau chief, please give the order, we'll go and capture him. Capture him for what? What do you want? Kill him? The bureau chief asked in annoyance. This kind of unstable factor can't be used by us, so we should get rid of him as soon as possible. Number 1 said with a murderous look. Ding Liang trembled in fear. He wanted to continue speaking up for Tang Jing, but the bureau chief beat him to it. So, this is why you're a subordinate, and I'm the bureau chief. I only know how to fight and kill every day. Number 1's face turned red. He lowered his head and didn't say a word. I've seen him so many times. I've heard his words and observed his actions. He's not really a rebellious person. As long as you don't touch his reverse scale, everything is fine, the bureau chief said in a low voice. If Tang Jing heard this judgment, he would definitely give him a thumbs up and praise his foresight. The bureau chief was right. Tang Jing didn't want to be enemies with anyone. He only wanted to protect the people around him. As long as they didn't touch his reverse scale, he was a simple and sunny big boy. If anyone didn't know how to adapt to the situation, then he would transform into a killing god and wouldn't be merciful. Moreover, don't you know where our focus is now? the bureau chief asked. Yes, I was wrong. It's good that you know you were wrong. Don't be impulsive and start a conflict with Tangjing again. What about the Atlantic Empire? Ding Liang was overjoyed. Although the chief had a grudge, he wasn't too furious. The Atlantic Empire's actions in Huaxia are so vile, and the evidence is conclusive. What else do they want? Do you want me to go public and become an international scandal? So what if Nicholas is dead? Do they still want to start a war? Ding Liang subconsciously shook his head. Huaxia was now a great country. Whether it was in terms of economy or military, it was no longer as weak as it used to be. If the Atlantic Empire insisted on doing so, they would definitely start a third world war, and their politicians would not be so stupid. Actually, Tangjing said something very well. The Atlantic Empire was willing to use the aircraft carrier technology in exchange for Nicholas's life. This means that Nicholas's life is more valuable than the technology. If we let the tiger return to the mountain, although we would still get some small benefits, the Atlantic Empire would still get the biggest benefits. The bureau chief sighed faintly and changed his tone. Although Tangjing is young, he sees things more clearly than many people. This time, we didn't see things as clearly as he did. We were all confused by the olive branch from the Atlantic Empire. Number 1 said unwillingly. Then what about the aircraft carrier technology? A hint of pride flashed across the bureau chief's eyes as he said, The Great Huaxia is a gathering of talents. Is it really impossible to solve those technical problems? If the Atlantic Empire can do it, so can we. It's just a matter of time. Yes, I understand. Number 1 was speechless. The bureau chief waved his hand and gestured for Ding Liang to leave. He then arranged for number 3 to help number 2 to recuperate. He then asked number 1, How's the situation in the Imperial City? I have already sent people to guard it. Not even a fly can think of flying in or out. We are conducting a comprehensive inspection of the Imperial City. The ground below is solid. However, we are not giving up. The dragon's roar came from below, so we are speeding up the construction. We must find it even if the dam is breached. The bureau chief nodded and said, This is of utmost importance. The dragon is the totem of Huaxia. If we find the dragon, it will be a great thing for our entire race. It is a blessing from the heavens to our Huaxia. Just like the dragon god, our race and country will definitely soar and soar into the sky. Yes, I will do my best to complete this task. If you find anything, you must inform me immediately. I want to be the first to know, understand? I know before the other chiefs. Do you understand? The bureau chief looked at number 1 sternly. Number 1 understood tacitly. Although the bureau chief stood at the top and was above millions of people, there were still competitors. This time, the competitors would definitely be paying attention to this matter. It was just that they were one step ahead and had the advantage. The dragon was very important. Whoever was the first to see the dragon, or even obtain the dragon, had a special meaning. Number 1 was very clear about this point, so he agreed without thinking. Rest assured, bureau chief. I will make a military pledge. The dragon search mission will be completed perfectly. No one else can think of getting a share of it. The bureau chief smiled in relief. Night fell in the Imperial City. The lights were still shining brightly, as if it was daytime. There was a sentry every 5 steps and a sentry every 10 steps. The security was very tight. Under the bright lights, the bombed ruins were already clear and clean. The hard stone slabs were also lifted up. Large machinery was working, excavating the ground. Bang! A large piece of soil was dug out from the ground and poured into the back of the car. Number 1 stood beside the car and stared at the hole on the ground that was getting bigger and bigger. It was as if a dragon would fly out from it at any time. His expression was serious, but it was hard to hide his excitement. If they really dug out a dragon, what kind of scene would that be? It was hard for him to imagine, but there was no doubt that it would be a scene that he would remember for the rest of his life. Outside the Imperial City, there were still scattered tourists gathered yesterday. But after being driven away by the military police, no one dared to come here. Although the people were very curious about what happened in the Imperial City, it was not difficult for the smart people to think that all this might have something to do with the roar that shook the sky. The two of them hid in a nearby forest and blended in with the dark environment. Master, that roar came from the Imperial City. Oh, a dragon's roar. Hee, I didn't expect that there was a dragon hidden under the Imperial City. Interesting. Then what should we do? Master will take you to see the real dragon. Yamada no Orochi wanted to turn into a dragon but didn't succeed. This time, let it succeed. Let's see it. After saying that, he stretched out his palm, and a strange giant snake with 8 heads wriggled its body in his palm. Yamada no Orochi had shrunk to the size of an earthworm. It obediently lay in the palm of 100 Faces Star-Lord. Its 8 heads kept flicking their tongues, looking ferocious and terrifying. These two people were 100 Faces Star-Lord and Junko. When Junko heard the dragon's roar last night, although she did not know what it was, she immediately reported it to her master. 100 Faces Star-Lord had fled to the island nation. He was ready to bring Yamada no Orochi back to help him. Without the demon beast, he always felt that something was missing. Naturally, he had to bring a new servant with him. After hearing Junko's description, 100 Faces Star-Lord immediately deduced that it must be a dragon's roar. Although he had never seen a real dragon, he was after all a person from ancient times. Although he had never eaten pork, he had seen pigs run. Naturally, he knew more than ordinary people. Junko's eyes flickered. She could not hide her surprise. Dragons are a legendary existence. Can we really see one? Of course, but I don't know why there is a dragon in the Imperial City. It's strange. 100 Faces Star-Lord muttered to himself suspiciously. You said that Tangjing and others were also in the Imperial City when the dragon's roar sounded, right? Yes, according to reliable information, that was the case. At that time, Song Yu buried explosives in order to kill him, but unexpectedly it did not kill him. Instead, it caused the dragon's roar. Junko nodded. These days, she had been hiding from her opponent's tracking. It was very difficult to hide, but she had also collected a lot of information. 100 Faces Star-Lord frowned. So he also heard the dragon's roar. He was here at that time, so it is impossible for him not to investigate. Has he found anything? Master, according to my judgment, he should not have. If he had found something, then the Huaxia officials would not have put the Imperial City under martial law. The dragon must not have appeared. Junko analyzed. 100 Faces Star-Lord thought for a while and said, That makes sense. Then it can only mean that Tangjing is not capable enough to find the real dragon. Then it will be easy for me. Junko asked curiously, Master, what should we do after we find the real dragon? 100 Faces Star-Lord's eyes flashed with cold light. He laughed and said lightly, Slay the dragon. Slay the dragon? Junko's heart beat wildly. Her master actually wanted to slay the dragon. This was too bold. It was not something she dared to think about. However, this also made her blood boil. Only by following such a master could she achieve greater things. This life was 1,000 times more interesting than the life in the Imperial Tutor's residence. Now she had broadened her horizons. She was no longer limited to the Imperial Tutor's residence, or the island nation. What benefits does slaying the dragon bring us? She could not hold back her curiosity and asked. 100 Faces Star-Lord's gaze fell on Yamada no Orochi and said with a smile, A dragon is a good thing. Everything on its body is a treasure. It is like a priceless treasure house. Junko's interest was greatly increased. Her eyes lit up. Master, after I eat the dragon's inner core, I can also transform into a dragon. Yamada no Orochi suddenly said. Yes, I will not forget you. I will help you realize your dream. I also look forward to having a dragon as a servant. Yamada no Orochi hurriedly said. After I become a dragon, I will do my best to go through fire and water for Master. 100 Faces Star-Lord laughed dryly. Yamata no Orochi had no choice but to be so docile. Even if it transformed into a dragon, it would not be able to escape from Hundred Faces Star-Lord's grasp. This was because he had used a secret technique to imprint a mark on Yamata no Orochi's soul. Unless he removed the mark on his own accord, Yamata no Orochi would have to listen to him no matter how powerful it became. Otherwise, he could take Yamata no Orochi's life with a single thought. Chapter 892. The night was like water. The soldiers were busy, but no one realized that the sky above them was even darker, as if dark clouds were pressing down on them. Suddenly, a strong wind blew and sand filled the sky. The wind blew so hard that people couldn't open their eyes. People were thrown off their feet, and their horses were thrown off their feet. Screams rang out everywhere. What happened? Number One's eyes widened. The wind and sand did not affect his vision at all. This wind was too strange. There must be something wrong with this abnormal situation. Suddenly, a terrifying pressure came from above his head. Number One abruptly raised his head and saw a scene that made his spirit tremble. A giant snake with 8 heads descended from the sky. There were 2 people standing on the giant snake. One of them was a woman, and the other was a child. His heart skipped a beat. He knew that the person who came did not come with good intentions. He shouted, "Who are you?" The other party didn't answer him, and didn't even look at him, which made him angry and anxious. Number One made a prompt decision and ordered, "Attack!" Bang, bang, bang. Tens of thousands of guns rang out in unison, and clusters of flames blossomed from the muzzles of the guns. The bullets were like raindrops that blotted out the sky and covered the earth. "Petty tricks," the 100 Change Star Sovereign said with disdain. "Roar!" As soon as he finished speaking, the 8 heads of Yamata no Orochi opened their mouths and roared at the same time. The powerful shockwave caused the bullets to stop abruptly and fall to the ground. Yamata no Orochi landed on the ground with a loud bang, crushing several large machines into pieces. Many people who were unable to dodge in time were also crushed into minced meat. Number One's expression changed, and his eyelids twitched. The enemy was too powerful, beyond his imagination. Orochi! He finally remembered what this monster was. Wasn't this the Yamata no Orochi that was mentioned in the information collected some time ago? Why had this monster come to Huaxia and even come to the Imperial City? He was not an idiot, and immediately thought of that dragon's roar. Could it be that it had also come for this? Who were the 2 people standing on the back of Yamata no Orochi? He stared at the child without blinking. Suddenly, a stroke of inspiration struck him, and he immediately guessed who it was. He could not help but exclaim, "100 Change Star Sovereign!" The 100 Faces Star Sovereign turned out to be a child, just like the rumors said. The other one must be a pure-blooded child. The government was well aware of the island nation's arrival in China, so it was not difficult to guess Junko's identity. Immediately, Number One felt the pressure of Mount Tai bearing down on him. Facing these masters, how could he still have his usual confidence? However, the responsibility on his shoulders did not allow him to retreat. Instead, he took a step forward and shouted in a bluff, "Why aren't you leaving? This is not a place where you should be." The 100 Changes Star Sovereign did not even look at him. Her gaze was fixed on the ground of the Imperial City that had already been excavated. Seeing that Number One was still making a racket, 100 Faces Star-Lord swept his sword-like eyebrows and said unhappily, "Make him shut up." After saying that, he lightly landed on the ground with Junko, and Orochi turned around and attacked Number One. The body of the Yamata no Orochi was huge and incomparably ferocious. When it opened its bloody mouth, a gust of fishy wind blew over. Number One sensed danger and retreated. With a flick of his wrist, a black iron whip flew out. This iron whip was thick and black, and each section had barbs shining with cold light. As long as one was hit by the iron whip, it would not end well. However, the Yamata no Orochi ignored it and went straight in. Its huge tail swept and collided with the iron whip, causing sparks to fly everywhere. The iron whip did not hurt it at all. It was all blocked by the scales on its body. Instead, number 1 was pushed back by a strong force. The other soldiers did not retreat and kept pulling the trigger. Some even took out their rocket launchers and aimed at the Yamata no Orochi. Whoosh! With a sharp sound, the rocket flew out and hit the Yamata no Orochi. After a huge explosion, the ground was full of holes, but the Yamata no Orochi was unharmed. However, this explosion undoubtedly angered the Yamata no Orochi. It looked up to the sky and roared like a killing machine. Using both its head and tail, it swept towards the people with a biting cold wind. These soldiers did not have the skills of number 1. Immediately, they were thrown off their feet and screams could be heard everywhere. Many people were sent flying and fell to the ground dead. Some were even directly cut in half at the waist. It was extremely miserable. For a moment, the imperial city became like a battlefield. The crazy Yamata no Orochi was extremely powerful. It was not something they could resist at all. Even if they had guns and cannons, it was too late to use them. Number 1 looked at this scene with his heart bleeding. It was not because of the death of these soldiers, but because of the mission. With this group of people interfering, wouldn't his mission be ruined? He even made a military order in front of the chief. Now, it seemed like a joke. Whoosh! A ferocious mouth attacked number 1. Number 1 hurriedly retreated, barely dodging the attack. He swung the iron whip in his hand at the palace wall, wrapping it around a protrusion on the wall. With a leap, he flew out of the palace along with the iron whip. Roar! Yamata no Orochi would not let him go. It twisted its huge body and directly crushed the wall. This was the center of the imperial city, and there were many palaces. Therefore, wherever Yamata no Orochi passed, the surrounding buildings were swept down and turned into ruins. This scene was too big, especially in the quiet night. It had already alarmed the people in the capital. Many people quickly gathered here, wanting to see what was going on. After all, the military police had cordoned off this area during the day, which had aroused the curiosity of many people. However, the government reacted even faster. After all, they had been paying attention to the imperial city. After hearing the commotion in the imperial city, a large number of reinforcements immediately rushed over. When they rushed into the palace gate, they happened to see Yamata no Orochi catching up to number 1. Its huge tail directly broke number 1's iron whip and ruthlessly lashed at number 1's body. Number 1 was in the martial king realm. However, he was still crushed in front of Yamata no Orochi. Number 1 knew that he could not avoid it. He hurriedly channeled his power to protect the vital parts of his body and growled. Bang! Number 1's body trembled violently. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face turned pale. It was clear in the dark night. He flew far away and smashed a big hole in the wall. Yamata no Orochi wanted to chase after him, but the reinforcements finally made their move. Bang! 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 Gunshots rang out, splashing sparks on Yamata no Orochi's body. Number 1 climbed up from the ruins of the drill bit. He did not care about the dust on his body and looked back in a sorry state. Yamata no Orochi was being sniped by powerful firepower, and could not chase after him for the time being. However, there was no doubt that these guns could do nothing to it. People kept dying under Yamata no Orochi's attacks. They died miserable deaths. This magnificent imperial city had become a hellish battlefield. Run! A thought appeared in number 1's mind. Then, he fled without looking back. This mission was a complete failure. No matter how the chief punished him, it was more important to save his life first. When he saw the chief was pacing back and forth in the room with a gloomy face. Seeing number 1, the chief was angry and questioned. Why did you come back? What's the situation over there? Number 1 lowered his head in shame and said, Chief, please punish me. The enemy is too strong. We can't stop them at all. Strong? Who are they? The chief obviously did not have the first line of information. Multiform Star Lord, Yamata no Orochi, and Junko from the island nation's Imperial Preceptor's residence. It's them. Number one's expression changed. They have guts. How dare they come to the capital to cause trouble? Number one said dejectedly. They came prepared. I'm afraid they were attracted by the dragon's roar. What? The chief exclaimed. They want to get their hands on the dragon too? Definitely. Otherwise, they would not have made such a big fuss and would not have gone to the imperial city. The chief was silent. Number one's words made sense. The enemy's target was so clear. They must have come for the dragon. Can't our people stop them at all? Number one shook his head dejectedly. We can't stop them. They are too strong. A bunch of good-for-nothings. You usually brag about how strong you are. Why can't you do it at the critical moment? The chief was flustered. Multiform Star-Lord is too strong. Yamata no Orochi's cultivation is also very high. This is also an important place in the capital. We don't dare to use weapons that are too strong. Number one explained. If they fought in the capital and used powerful weapons, it would definitely attract the attention of the whole country and even the whole world. The influence would be very bad. Number one was just a martial artist. He did not dare to make such a decision. At this juncture, what's the point of thinking about that? Don't we still have the mechas? Send the mechas. Approve the use of other weapons of mass destruction. The dragon is the key. We must not let them beat us to it. Number one looked at the chief in shock. This order was not normal. Pulling one part of it would affect the whole situation. This time, it was really going to blow up. It might get out of hand. Yes. Number one suppressed the fear in his heart. This was a battle of life and death. If they lost, the chief's leadership position in the country would be shaken. It might even give the other party an excuse. Thus, they could not afford to lose. What about Tang Jing and the rest? Aren't they archenemies with Multiform Star-Lord? Tell them this news. They probably won't sit back and do nothing. The chief pondered for a while and ordered. What if they want to get their hands on the dragon too? Stupid. Is it easier to deal with Tang Jing or Multiform Star-Lord? The chief scolded. Of course it's Tang Jing. Then let's not worry about it. Let's deal with Multiform Star-Lord first. Even if Tang Jing really wants to get his hands on the dragon, we can think of a countermeasure. The most important thing now is to settle this matter. The chief said earnestly. Yes, I understand. Bring number 3 along too. There's no harm in having more people. Then what about you, chief? Won't there be no one to protect you? What is this place? Would normal people dare to come here? Yes, sir. Number 1 called number 3 and left together. He also informed Tang Jing that Multiform Star-Lord and Orochi were in the Imperial City. Tang Jing already knew what was going on in the Imperial City, but he didn't know what was going on. But after receiving the notice from number 1, he was really surprised. He didn't expect Multiform Star-Lord to be so unscrupulous and come to the Imperial City to make a scene. We've searched high and low for it, only to find it by chance. We've spent so much effort to find Junko and the others. I didn't expect them to take the initiative to offer themselves. I'm afraid they're here for the 5-clawed golden dragon. Chapter 893. Tang Jing informed Tian Chanzi and brought Emperor Fairy and Huang Xiang to the Imperial City. Lan Yu stayed behind to protect everyone. Emperor Fairy was very interested when she heard that Changeable Star-Lord had appeared again. The 3 of them rushed to the Imperial City at lightning speed, only to find that the Imperial City was surrounded by soldiers. Sounds of fierce fighting could be heard from the crowd. Let's go in from the sky. Tang Jing flew on his sword and brought Huang Xiang into the Imperial City silently. While they were still in the air, they could clearly see the situation below. There were countless casualties, and many palaces in the Imperial City had been destroyed. Yamata no Orochi was still twisting its huge body, and there was no place for it to fight back. Number 1 and Number 3 were still resisting with all their might. Suddenly, Orochi bit Number 3's arm. Number 3 screamed and retreated quickly. However, Orochi was faster. 2 fangs pierced through his chest and into his heart. Number 3! Number 1 yelled in agony, but he couldn't do it alone. There was nothing he could do. Orochi attacked Number 1 again. Suddenly, there was a roar above their heads. Mechas! Tangjing was shocked when he saw 2 huge creatures flying toward him. It seemed that the dragon group's mechas weren't all destroyed. The officials still kept the mechas. Now they came in handy. Why didn't you come earlier? Number 1 pounded the ground. Number 3's death was a big blow to him. 2 mechas descended from the sky with a ferocious aura. Bang! The mecha swept out with its leg and accurately struck Yamada no Orochi. Roar! Yamada no Orochi let out a painful roar and was sent flying. It landed on a palace and smashed a huge hole in it. The 2 mechas landed and didn't stop. They tiptoed and rushed toward Orochi as if they were weightless. One of the mechas grabbed onto one of Orochi's heads and let out a low growl. Poof! The head was torn off and blood flowed out. The mecha stomped its feet, and the head turned into a meat patty. Ayo ayo ayo! Yamada no Orochi was enraged. It let out a heart-wrenching roar as it twisted its body and swept its giant tail towards the mecha. The mecha chose to meet force with force. Its iron fist struck out and collided with the giant tail. Both sides retreated at the same time. However, the distance the mecha retreated was obviously much further. The other mech did not sit back and watch. Its arm quickly transformed, revealing a small missile. Whoosh! The missile left a long trail of flames behind it as it struck Orochi. Boom! With a loud explosion, sparks flew in all directions. A piece of Yamada no Orochi's scales fell off, revealing its bloody flesh. Tangjing watched this scene in awe and muttered to himself. The mecha's combat power has improved tremendously compared to before. It seemed that after the destruction of the dragon group, the country did not give up on the research of mecha. It was just that this time, there were no super soldiers. Did the country continue this project? Yamada no Orochi cried out incessantly. It was caught off guard. This was the first time it had encountered such a technological product. I'll tear you apart. With a loud roar, it pounced towards one of the mecha. The other mecha hurriedly came to its aid. The 3 of them tangled together, exchanging blows back and forth. However, the buildings in the Imperial City suffered. When faced with such a terrifying giant, the majestic buildings were like fragile window paper that could not withstand the wind. They would break with a single poke and shatter with a single strike. Tangjing did not go down to help. Instead, he flew straight towards the center of the Imperial City. He had to find 100 Faces. Finally, he saw 100 Faces walking back and forth on the ground. This was where the eye of the formation was located. However, the ground had been dug out with countless holes of various sizes. It was a complete mess. He could not immediately see through the formation. Haha, I finally understand. So it's a formation. Even if those fools dug all the way to the center of the ground, they wouldn't be able to find a dragon. Instead, they destroyed the prototype of the formation. It took me so long to find a clue. 100 Faces, Star-Lord said excitedly. Junko was also ecstatic. Master, will we be able to see the dragon? Of course. How could a small formation not be able to stump us? 100 Faces was brimming with confidence. Just as he was about to cast a spell to break the formation, he suddenly raised his head and looked at the night sky. 3 people appeared in the night sky. It's you again. Why are you still here? 100 Faces roared. His delicate face revealed a fierce expression. 100 Faces, you dared to come back after running away. You really are not afraid of death. Tangjing coldly snorted. Humph, who said I ran away? Why would I, the famous 100 Change Star-Lord, run away from a little kid like you? 100 Change Star-Lord retorted, unable to maintain his dignity. Tangjing sneered. Haha, is that so? Then don't run away this time. Who said I was running away? 100 Faces was complacent. As long as he succeeded in slaying the dragon and obtained the secret of the dragon clan, he was confident that he would not be afraid even if he faced the Empyrean fairy. If I'm not wrong, you're here for the dragon? Tang Zheng probed. You also know about the dragon? 100 Faces' pupils shrank. He looked at Tang Zheng with suspicion. Tang Zheng smiled mysteriously. He did not comment and asked, "Why do you want to find the dragon? What does it have to do with you? Then don't even think about finding it." Tang Zheng and the other two immediately descended from the sky and landed not far away from the 100 Transformations Star-Lord. They stared at the two of them without blinking. Tang Zheng's gaze subconsciously fell on Junko. His eyes lit up as he said, "You really broke through to the master stage." Back then, Junko's cultivation was only at the early stage of the Xiantian realm. She was still thousands of miles away from the master stage. But now, she had actually crossed that hurdle. There was no doubt that all of this was due to 100 Faces. When enemies met, their eyes would turn red. Junko looked at Tang Zheng with such a feeling. Her eyes were red and she wanted nothing more than to kill him with her sword. The Imperial Preceptor's residence was destroyed because of Tang Zheng. It was also because of Tang Zheng that she recognized 100 Faces as her master, and her cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds. Although fortune and misfortune came hand in hand, her hatred for Tang Zheng had never decreased. Junko looked at Tang Zheng and said hatefully, "Tang Zheng, one day I will kill you with my own hands." Tang Zheng jokingly said, "You're acknowledging a thief as your father. Most of the people in the Imperial Preceptor's residence died in the hands of 100 Faces. Yet you're pledging allegiance to him." Junko's expression greatly changed. This was an eternal scar in her heart. She saw with her own eyes that 100 Faces killed the people in the Imperial Preceptor's residence. Moreover, the Imperial Preceptor's death in the mouth of Yamata no Orochi was also tacitly approved by 100 Faces. Therefore, in truth, the 100 Faces Star-Lord was her enemy. Island nation people always like to acknowledge a thief as their father. For example, when the island nation was defeated by the Atlantic Empire, they even ate 2 atomic bombs and suffered heavy casualties. But after the war, the island nation begged for mercy from the Atlantic Empire. They even allowed the Atlantic Empire to station troops in their country. This was simply a loss of power and humiliation. But in the eyes of the island nation people, they were never tired of it, and had a good impression of the Atlantic Empire. One had to say that this was a cheap thing. Junko was no exception. She had inherited her own ethnic characteristics. "Nonsense! Our island nation will rise under the guidance of Master. We will complete the mission that we failed to complete in the past. Our strong ships and sharp cannons, our iron hooves will step on the land of Huaxia." Junko's veins were bulging as she shouted herself hoarse. Tang Zheng's eyelids twitched as he sternly said, "You still want to kill our Huaxia? Since that's the case, then I can't let you live. With Master here, do you think you can kill me?" Junko hid behind 100 Face Star-Lord and said fearlessly. In her mind, 100 Faces was an invincible and omnipotent person. She had never seen the power of the Empyrean fairy, so she was so fearless. 100 Faces looked at them and said, "I don't want to talk nonsense with you. I will deal with you after I find the dragon." He hurriedly circulated his power and was about to open the array. "Stop!" Tang Zheng shouted. How could he let him do as he wished? He drew his bow and shot the shooting sun arrow. So, 100 Faces had seen the power of the shooting sun arrow and did not dare to underestimate it. He pointed his finger, and the debris on the ground flew up and condensed into a long spear to meet the shooting sun arrow. Pun! With a loud explosion, the long spear was destroyed and the shooting sun arrow's attack was greatly reduced. Tang Zheng had already used this opportunity to appear in front of 100 Faces. He did not have time to activate the array. "Go to hell!" When the 100 Form Star Sovereign saw this, he grabbed at the void with both hands. The stone slabs on the ground shook violently and then broke free from the ground. They flew up and turned into fine powder. In an instant, the powder changed shape and formed a giant palm. The gigantic palm descended from the sky, causing Tang Jing to immediately raise the War Soul Sword, causing the sword light to shine brightly. With a low roar, he prepared to slash at the 100 Transformation Star Lord, but he saw a black shadow take a step forward and rush into the sky. Pun! The giant palm exploded and sand filled the sky. A figure staggered and fell to the ground. It was like a heavy artillery shell hitting the ground. Dust filled the sky and the ground cracked inch by inch. It was a spectacular sight. Huang Xiang! He had actually made a move before the Empyrean Fairy. Huang Xiang's thinking was simple. As long as Tang Jing was threatened, he would rush forward without hesitation. Moreover, his strength was equivalent to a 9th-grade golden core, and he had the invincible Vajra body. He had actually withstood the power of the palm. Eh? The 100 Transformation Star Lord cried out in alarm as he looked at Huang Xiang in astonishment. Huang Xiang gave off a sinister aura like that of a ghost, and was extremely powerful. Puppet? Tang Jing, you actually nurtured a puppet expert. The 100 Transformation Star Sovereign saw through Huang Xiang's background with a single glance. Junko looked at Huang Xiang in shock. With her eyes, she could see that this person's strength was far above her own. Moreover, he was Tang Deng's puppet. She could not help but feel a little apprehensive. Just how many mysterious methods did he have? You have quite a lot of tricks up your sleeve. You surprised me, but that's all. 100 Faces snorted and his hands changed shape. Instantly, the aura of the entire area changed, and the ground started to shake. Tang Jing, dodge! Empyrean Fairy suddenly shouted and stood in front of Tang Jing to protect him. Boom! A formless chi covered the sky and covered the earth, bombarding in front of Tang Jing, causing him to stagger backwards. If not for the 9 Heavens mystical maiden protecting him, he would have suffered quite a bit. He was still too weak against 100 Faces. Chapter 894. Seeing that Xian Envy of the 9 Heavens had summoned the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of earth and veil, Celestial Lord of the 100 Faces also summoned the heavenly water banner. The banner flickered and swept toward Xian Envy of the 9 Heavens. The two had fought before and were relatively familiar with each other's routines and methods. They understood that this was going to be a long battle. Their cultivation levels were similar, but the mountain river map was obviously more powerful than the sky water banner, so the Empyrean Fairy had the upper hand from the beginning. Tang Jing turned his eyes and stared at the almost sluggish Junko. She didn't expect that Tang Jing would have such a powerful helper, and it was even a woman. She couldn't help but imagine how wonderful it would be if she was as powerful as the Empyrean Fairy. But she immediately realized how bad her situation was because Tang Jing's eyes had locked on to her. She felt the danger and subconsciously retreated, wanting to hide in the darkness. How could Tang Jing let her have her way? With a light tap of his foot, he shot out like an arrow. War Spirit slashed out and she quickly used her sword to resist, but how could her swordsmanship be compared with Tang Jing's? She was only at the first level of the Supreme Power Realm, which was absolutely powerful for ordinary people, but not for Tang Jing. Clang! The two swords collided. With just one sword she felt her arm tremble violently, and her palm go numb. The long sword almost flew out of her hand. Seeing Tang Jing thrusting his sword again, this time even more powerful, she couldn't resist at all. She quickly used ninjutsu. Whoosh! The War Soul Sword missed and slashed into the ground, creating a huge crack. Where is she? Tang Jing frowned and looked around, but there was no sign of her. He suddenly remembered the ninjutsu in the Imperial Preceptor's residence. There was no doubt that she had used ninjutsu, and her level was more powerful than the Imperial Preceptor's. It's just a ninjutsu, an insignificant skill. Tang Jing roared as he activated Battle Soul and slashed out 81 times in the air. In an instant, The surrounding area of several tens of meters was enveloped by sword cheese. The ground was slashed into pieces by the sword cheese, and even the air seemed to have been torn into pieces. Only the multiform Star-Lord and the Empyrean Fairy were unaffected. Their battle was extremely intense. Everywhere they passed, it was as if a hurricane had passed through. Everything was shattered into pieces. It was a complete mess. Tang Jing sighed in his heart. After this battle, more than half of the Imperial City would be destroyed, and the culprit behind all of this was Song Yu. If he had not used explosives, the array formation would not have been damaged, and the dragon's roar would not have come out. But it was too late for that now. Under the sweep of the sword energy, Junko's ninjutsu failed, and she was forced to reveal herself. The corner of Tang Jing's mouth curled up, and Battle Soul pierced through Junko's shoulder and came out of her body. Ah! Junko let out a scream as she held Battle Soul with both of her hands and quickly retreated. Puff! The War Soul sword was pulled out, and was about to stab out another fatal strike. Junko's heart was about to burst, and her eyes were filled with despair. She originally thought that she could do whatever she wanted after acknowledging the multiform Star-Lord as her master. But she did not expect that the Empyrean Fairy was so powerful that it was abnormal. Even though she had seen how powerful the Empyrean Fairy was when she attacked Tang Jing's villa, that was only a small test of the Empyrean Fairy's skills. So she did not expect that this was the true level of the Empyrean Fairy. She glanced at the Empyrean Fairy and the multiform Star-Lord from the corner of her eyes, and unwillingly screamed, "Master, save me!" The multiform Star-Lord's heart skipped a beat when he heard this. The people he had subdued were either dead or injured, and Junko was indeed obedient. He did not want her to die for the time being. Seeing Tang Gang's killing blow, he hurriedly shouted, "Yamata no Orochi, get over here and save me!" His voice reached the horizon and rumbled like thunder in the sky above the Imperial City. Yamata no Orochi, who was originally entangled with two mechas, twisted its huge body and knocked down a palace. Taking advantage of the chaos, it rushed to the center of the Imperial City. The battle between Yamata no Orochi and the mechas was also very tragic. Both sides were injured. One of the mechas had an arm crippled, and the other had a large piece of the mecha's waist swept away. As for Yamata no Orochi, it did not have much of an advantage. A few scales fell from its body, and one of its heads was torn off. It was definitely a heavy loss. The mechas were slightly hindered by the palace that was swept away, and Yamata no Orochi escaped. Number 1 walked out from the corner. The battle just now had frightened him, but when he heard the fierce battle coming from the center of the Imperial City, he guessed that it must be Tang Jing who had come. He heaved a sigh of relief in his heart as he had no choice but to admit that Tang Jing was truly powerful. He could not even deal with Yamata no Orochi, let alone the multiform Star-Lord himself. And from the sound, it was obvious that Tang Jing was restraining the multiform Star-Lord. That was why he exposed himself and called for Yamata no Orochi's help. No wonder the chief tolerated Tang Gang's behavior so many times. The chief knows better than me that Tang Jing is not a person who can be defeated by force. If we force him step by step, I am afraid that in the end, we will not get any benefits. Number 1 thought and felt that he finally understood the chief's mind. Seeing Yamata no Orochi running away, Number 1 was worried about the dragon, so he quickly ordered, "Chase!" He followed behind the two mechas and quickly chased to the center of the Imperial City, leaving the ordinary soldiers outside. This level of battle was no longer something they could control. If they rushed forward, they would only be cannon fodder. At the critical moment, Number 1 finally showed some mercy and did not order them to continue to charge forward. War spirit was about to pierce Junko's heart. She retreated again and again, but in the end, there was no way to retreat. She was desperate. Suddenly, a fishy smell came to her nose. She was overjoyed and shouted, "Yamata no Orochi, save me!" Whoosh! A huge tail swept toward Tang Jing. Tang Jing did not dodge. Instead, he raised war spirit and slashed at it. Clang! Sparks flew, and a piece of scale fell off, leaving a bloody mess. Tang Jing was overjoyed. His cultivation had increased so much during this period of time, and it was really useful. He could actually hurt Yamata no Orochi. One must know that when he was in Japan, he was helpless against the Yamata no Orochi. He had no way to fight back. However, the huge force still pushed him back dozens of meters. Junko patted her chest with lingering fear. Her heart almost jumped out of her chest. She did not care about the sword wound on her shoulder. She only felt that living was so wonderful. Brat, I didn't kill you last time. Today, you can forget about escaping from my hands. Yamata no Orochi roared and attacked Tang Jing with his head and tail. Squeak! Xiao Bai, who had been indifferent, finally moved. He spat out a mouthful of flames, and Yamata no Orochi quickly dodged. It knew how powerful this flame was. Xiao Bai floated in front of Tang Jing angrily, and stared at Yamata no Orochi. Yamata no Orochi's huge eyes also stared at him. Little guy, it's you again! I'm going to eat you! Yamata no Orochi roared, but he was not in a hurry to attack. Instead, he opened his bloody mouth. Tang Jing hurriedly held his breath as a puff of black smoke came out of his mouth, giving off an incomparably fishy stench. Squeak, squeak! Xiao Bai suddenly shouted at Tang Jing and covered his mouth and nose. Tang Jing's head trembled, looking at Xiao Bai's nervous expression. Could it be that the black smoke was poisonous? Not only did he slow down, he quickly retreated. Black smoke rolled, sweeping towards Tang Jing. Wherever it passed, even the stone slabs on the ground would rot. Roar! Suddenly, a black shadow rushed into the black smoke, and with a loud roar, the black shadow flew out again, landing at Tang Jing's feet. Tang Jing was shocked. It was actually Huang Xiang. Seeing that Tang Jing was threatened, he actually attacked without caring about anything else. However, at the moment, Huang Xiang was in an extremely sorry state. His clothes were corroded by the black smoke and were in tatters. However, his skin did not rot. Tang Jing suddenly realized that he had an indestructible body, so the black smoke could not hurt him. Although Tang Jing also cultivated the chaotic Vajra spell and his realm was not weak, he was still a living person and could not be compared to Huang Xiang. If he rushed in, he would definitely not pay attention to breathing in the black smoke, which would be fatal to him. Huang Xiang was a puppet, which was equivalent to a dead object, so he was not afraid of the black smoke. Huang Xiang got up again and moved his muscles and bones. Although his clothes were tattered, his body was in good condition. His eyes shone with a cold light and his whole body emitted a cold aura. He took a step back and rushed forward again. Bang! He flew out from the black smoke again. This time, Yamata no Orochi's roar was even louder, like thunder. However, Yamata no Orochi was hidden behind the black smoke, so Tang Jing could not see clearly what kind of injuries it had suffered. Huang Xiang crawled up and patted his clothes, as if nothing had happened. Even Tang Jing could not help but admire him. This is not the way to go on. Since your black smoke is harmful to living beings, I will use the four symbols venerable to deal with you. Tang Jing's heart moved as he came up with a countermeasure. Back then, when he was on the island nation, the four symbols venerable had been severely injured, so when he was dealing with the Yamata no Orochi, the four symbols venerable had not been of any use. This time, not only had the four symbols venerable completely recovered, his strength had also risen to another level, so Tang Jing was very worried about who was stronger and who was weaker between the two of them. The venerable four symbols landed heavily on the ground, and two pits immediately appeared on the ground. The venerable four symbols was slightly lower than a mech, and was as black as ink. It did not have the fancy appearance of a mech, but it gave off a very powerful feeling. Number 1 hid in the distance, and did not immediately let the mech join the battle. Instead, he stared at the four symbols venerable without blinking. This was the first time he had seen the four symbols venerable with his own eyes. Although he had seen the information about the four symbols venerable before, it was far from being as shocking as seeing it with his own eyes. Where did he find these things? Number 1 couldn't help but feel a little jealous of Tang Jing. I'm so envious. The four symbols venerable did not say anything. After a run-up, it charged into the black smoke. Sounds of fierce fighting could be heard from the black smoke, and the black smoke kept tumbling and was stirred up into pieces. Huang Xiang charged out again and disappeared into the black smoke. Immediately, the fight became more intense. Yamada no Orochi roared again and again, and the ground was almost trembling. Chapter 895. The battle between the three powerhouses was earth-shattering. Cracks spread out from the black smoke as if the mountains were collapsing. Whoosh! Huang Xiang flew out again, but this time, he was holding a huge, hideous head in his hand. He took the opportunity while Yamada no Orochi and the four symbols were fighting fiercely to take down one of its heads. He was indeed powerful. Tang Jing could not help but be shocked. He thought to himself that the heaven monk was truly awesome, to actually nurture such a powerful puppet. Speak of the devil! A ray of sword light fell from the sky and slashed at the black smoke. The sword light disappeared, and blood soared into the sky. Yamada no Orochi's hysterical roar could be heard. Tang Jing was slightly delighted. He quickly looked up and saw Tian Chanzi floating in the air with a sword in his hand. His long hair fluttered in the wind, and he looked like an immortal who had descended to the mortal world. He didn't stop after the first strike, and quickly slashed out a few more times. Immediately, the black room churned, and Yamada no Orochi's enormous body rushed out of the black smoke, while the four symbols venerable and Huang Xiang chased after it like a shadow. Number 1 watched this scene in the dark and was still in shock. Seeing Yamada no Orochi rushing towards him, he quickly shouted, "Stop it!" 2 mechas rushed forward. Their huge iron fists tore through the air and smashed onto Yamada no Orochi's head. Bang! 2 of its eyeballs exploded. Yamada no Orochi let out a roar, but it didn't retreat. It took the opportunity to bite the mecha's arm. Poof! The arm was torn off, and sparks flew from the broken arm. The other snake head also attacked. Its bloody mouth fell from the sky. The mecha didn't have time to dodge, and its head was bitten. Bang! An intense electric current crackled. Sparks flew everywhere. The mecha's head was separated from its body, and it fell to the ground. There was a loud crash, and dust flew everywhere. Number 1 watched this scene with his heart bleeding. This mecha wasn't cheap, and it was destroyed just like that. The other mecha took the opportunity to grab one of its tails. The missile on its arm directly bombarded the tail at close range. With a loud explosion, blood filled the sky as the tail was blown away. Yamada no Orochi continued to struggle and roar, but to no avail. The other pursuers had also arrived. The four symbols venerable stomped on one of its tails, preventing it from escaping. Then, a pitch-black fist smashed into its body. It trembled violently and paused for a few seconds. A huge wound appeared on its body. Blood gushed out like a huge black hole. This punch landed on the main part of its body, not its head and tail, so the damage it received was more serious than if its head and tail were broken. Tian Chanzi descended from the sky, and his long sword opened a huge trench-like wound on Orochi's body. Yamada no Orochi's struggle slowed down. Anger and despair coexisted in its eyes as it roared unwillingly. "Master, save me!" Hundred Face of course saw a group of people besieging Yamada no Orochi, but he couldn't do anything. He was too reckless. He thought that he could easily find Dragon. He didn't expect the enemy to arrive much earlier than he expected. Even the strength of the government's counterattack was beyond his imagination. The mecha wasn't easy to deal with. Besides, if he hadn't searched the ground for so long before finding the array, he would have activated the array to find Dragon. Hold on. Hundred Face couldn't even take care of himself. How could he save Yamada no Orochi? He knew that this couldn't go on. He had to find Dragon. Otherwise, all his sacrifices would be in vain. The moment he was distracted, the Empyrean fairy's attack came. As if struck by lightning, he fell from the sky and smashed into the ground. Dust filled the air, and a huge pit several meters deep was created. The Empyrean maiden was about to follow up with another attack when she suddenly shouted, "Oh no!" Her figure flashed, and she jumped into the huge crater, disappearing into the dust without making a sound. Huh! Tang Jing had been paying attention to the situation. When he heard the Empyrean fairy scream, he immediately noticed something was wrong. His expression changed slightly. "100 Face of Face has found the array. He is activating it." He rushed to the big pit. However, the array had been closed. There was no one in the big pit. Obviously, 100 Face of Face and the Empyrean fairy had both entered the mysterious space under the Imperial City. He didn't look back. He immediately activated the array and chased after them. Many others also saw the situation here, but they didn't have time to chase after them. Especially number 1, he had already guessed a little, but he could only sigh and feel powerless. Yamata no Orochi was attacked one after another. He was already exhausted. His futile struggle was getting slower and slower. Junko was hiding in the dark far away. Seeing this scene, her heart was as cold as ice. She knew that this operation had gone down the drain. If she didn't leave now, she wouldn't be able to leave until her opponent regained his senses. Therefore, she fled without looking back. She didn't care about 100 Face of Face and Yamata no Orochi at all. After such a big battle, the Imperial City was no longer as tightly guarded as before. Therefore, Junko found a loophole and escaped from the Imperial City. Moreover, when everyone's attention was attracted to the Imperial City, she sneaked out of the capital. She didn't dare to stay for a moment. She directly returned to the island nation. Yamata no Orochi was not so lucky. He was already full of wounds. After being attacked by the joint attack, he fell to the ground with a bang. It was difficult for him to get up again. I, Yamata no Orochi, have lived for thousands of years. I didn't expect that I would fall into your hands in the end. I can't accept this. Yamata no Orochi's pupils were like huge lanterns. He roared unwillingly. You escaped from Huaxia. Now that you dare to come back, you should know what will happen to you. You have only yourself to blame. Don't you know how many people have died in your mouth? For the souls of those who died unjustly, taking your life is the right thing to do, Tian Chanzi said righteously. Tang Jing once told him that during the disaster of Huaxia, the island nation secretly transported tens of thousands of people from Huaxia and stuffed them into the stomach of Yamata no Orochi. That was why its strength could recover so much. No less than 100,000 people died in its stomach. This kind of evil beast was not killed to appease the anger of the people. Even if Tian Chanzi had a firm mind, when he heard the news, he was furious. Being able to kill Yamata no Orochi was an explanation for the people who died. Number 1 didn't understand the reason. Seeing that Yamata no Orochi had little strength to resist, he really wanted to say that they shouldn't kill it. It would be better to capture it for research. After all, this kind of demon beast was hard to come by. But he swallowed the words back. No matter what official status he had no right to speak here. Here, the strong were respected. He was the weakest. Even if he spoke until his throat was broken, no one would listen to him. Why should he humiliate himself? Go to hell, Yamata no Orochi! Tian Chanzi raised his long sword high, and the sword light flashed. Desperation flashed in Yamata no Orochi's eyes, but they were quickly filled with raging flames. It roared unyieldingly. I won't die! It still wanted to make a dying struggle. Suddenly, a white light flashed, and Xiaobai flew over from nowhere directly to the wound of Yamata no Orochi. Yamata no Orochi's movements were half a beat slower. Although it clearly saw Xiaobai's movements, it still couldn't stop it. Xiaobai's 2 pairs of small claws fell on the wound of Yamata no Orochi. With a scratch, a piece of scale was peeled off. With a flash of white light, Xiaobai disappeared. Roar! Then, Yamata no Orochi let out a heart-wrenching scream, which was particularly terrifying and shook the wilderness. Its huge body kept twisting on the ground. In the end, it directly rose into the air and fell heavily. The others were shocked and quickly retreated. Yamata no Orochi crazily used its head and tail. With a rumbling sound, the buildings of the imperial city were destroyed. Tian Chanzi looked thoughtfully at the struggling Yamata no Orochi and muttered to himself. Interesting. This little guy actually knows that it's a good thing. What was it? Number 1 was confused and looked at Yamata no Orochi blankly. Then why did Xiaobai do that? Suddenly, Yamata no Orochi's body twitched and completely stopped struggling. Its eyes were wide open, but it had lost its color and vitality. Yamata no Orochi was dead. Number 1 was stunned. Such a powerful existence actually died, but it was a pity that it didn't die in his hands. It was related to that little guy. Pung! A cloud of blood mist exploded, and a big hole appeared in Yamata no Orochi's abdomen. Xiaobai walked out leisurely and swaggered out with a satisfied look on its face. Its body was smooth, without a trace of blood, and there was a crystal-clear thing in its mouth. Inner core! Everyone immediately recognized it, including Number 1. After all, the government had captured many monsters, and mechas were powered by the energy of the monster's inner core. Since Yamata no Orochi was so powerful, how powerful was its inner core? Number 1 didn't dare to imagine, but there was no doubt that if this inner core was used to power the mecha's combat power would definitely be more powerful. This battle made him deeply understand the role of mechas, which were far more powerful than his own. If he could create a more powerful mecha, then even if he faced such a powerful monster in the future, he would have the power to fight back. He wouldn't necessarily have to rely on Tangjing. Just as he opened his mouth and was about to say not to damage the inner core, Xiaobai's little mouth immediately bit on the inner core. Like a giant whale sucking in water, the inner core quickly shrank and finally disappeared into its little mouth. Number 1 was stunned with his mouth open. Xiaobai ate the inner core. Burp. Xiaobai opened its mouth and let out a satisfied burp. Its little body swayed as it walked towards Tian Chanzi. Just as it walked to Tian Chanzi's feet, it used its claws to scratch the instep of his feet. Its eyes were half closed, and finally its head tilted to one side and it fell down as if it was drunk. Looking at its charmingly naive appearance, Tian Chanzi couldn't help but laugh. He knew Xiaobai's state very well. After it ate the inner core, the energy of the inner core was slowly spreading, so it was sleepy. It was digesting the energy. It had been in this state before, so it didn't care. With a laugh, it picked up Xiaobai and handed it to Huang Xiang. Protect it. Huang Xiang carefully held Xiaobai and looked around vigilantly, as if afraid that someone would come and snatch it away. Chapter 896. Number 1's gaze moved away from Xiaobai and landed on Tian Chanzi. Now that Orochi was dead and Tangjing and the others had disappeared, he was at a loss. Tian Chanzi didn't even look at him and glanced at the center of the imperial palace. He knew that they must have gone to that place. It wasn't good for him to chase after them in front of so many people. He had to stay in guard so that Number 1 and the others wouldn't dare to act rashly. Moreover, with the Empyrean Fairy, he didn't have to worry about Tang Zheng's safety. Number 1 finally couldn't help but ask anxiously, "May I ask where Tang Jing and the others went?" Tian Chanzi looked at him with a smile that wasn't a smile and said jokingly, "Do you want to know?" Number 1 hesitated for a moment and nodded. "Should we chase after them in case he's in danger?" Tian Chanzi chuckled. "Do you know where they went?" "This?" Number 1 was speechless. The pit wasn't deep and he had already seen the bottom. There wasn't any passage. In other words, the disappearance of the 3 people was definitely not that simple. It must be some kind of mysterious method of the cultivators. He couldn't think of anything even if he racked his brains. Now he understood that finding the dragon wasn't something that could be done by digging 3 feet into the ground. It had to be done through some kind of mysterious method of the cultivators. Although I don't know, Senior definitely knows that the 100 Transformations Star-Lord is very powerful. We can't let the 100 Transformations Star-Lord succeed. With our help, we will definitely get twice the result with half the effort. Number One's reaction was not slow, and he immediately thought of an excuse. You don't have to worry about that. You should clean up this mess. Tian Chanzi still didn't fall for it, and pointed at the messy imperial palace. Number One's face was troubled. He was angry but didn't dare to say anything. This was the mission given to him by the chief, and he hadn't even completed half of it. However, he had no choice. His gaze subconsciously fell on the corpse of Orochi, and his heart jumped. The body of a monster was a treasure, even if it was a corpse. Although they couldn't find the dragon, if they took the corpse back for research, they might have unexpected gains. He quickly ordered the soldiers outside to take Yamata no Orochi away. Yamata no Orochi was killed by Xiao Bai. I'm afraid it's not up to you to decide, Tian Chanzi said calmly. Huh? Number One was stunned, his body stiffening subconsciously, as if his thoughts had been seen through. He said awkwardly, Senior, isn't this thing a hindrance if we leave it here? I'll handle it for you, Tian Chanzi said with a fake smile. You think it's an eyesore, right? Number One nodded subconsciously. Then it's not an eyesore anymore. Tian Chanzi waved his hand casually, and Number One's eyes widened into lanterns. Yamata no Orochi had vanished into thin air. Tian Chanzi smiled and said, Is this still an eyesore? Number One shook his head blankly. This was indeed not an eyesore, but he wanted to cry. How could they bully people like this? You didn't even leave me a single bit of loot. How am I supposed to report back? Tian Chanzi didn't care about his feelings. He turned his head and stared at the big hole without blinking. Tang Jing followed into the tunnel, only to find that 100 Faces and the Empyrean Fairy were fighting fiercely. 100 Faces retreated as he fought, but he retreated deeper into the tunnel, where the 5-clawed golden dragon was. 100 Faces had the geographical advantage. No matter how they attacked, they couldn't stop him. Instead, he retreated closer and closer to the 5-clawed golden dragon. Suddenly, 100 Faces' eyelids twitched, and his face showed ecstasy. I can feel the dragon's breath. Haha, you tried so hard to stop me. Do you really think you can succeed? He blocked the Empyrean Fairy with one move and ran back without looking back. In an instant, he arrived at the hall where the 5-clawed golden dragon was imprisoned. He looked up and his eyes were filled with disbelief. He exclaimed, The 5-clawed golden dragon, it's the 5-clawed golden dragon, ha ha. His laughter echoed in the hall. Clatter. The 5-clawed golden dragon looked at the uninvited guest and twisted his body. The iron chains on his 5 claws made a crisp sound. 100 Faces' eyes changed slightly. He's still shackled. He's really imprisoned here. Who are you? The 5-clawed golden dragon asked majestically. His voice was so loud that it made people's eardrums buzz. 100 Faces wasn't affected. Instead, he looked at the 5-clawed golden dragon with a smile. My name is 100 Faces. You can remember this name. Humph, so you're 100 Faces. The 5-clawed golden dragon had heard this name from Tang Jing, so he was familiar with it. The 100 Transformations Star-Lord said in astonishment. You actually know me, I presume that brat Tang Jing told you. The 5-clawed golden dragon didn't answer immediately. Instead, he focused on Tang Jing and the Empyrean Fairy, who were chasing after him. Why did you lure him here? The 5-clawed golden dragon asked. We didn't lure him here. He smelled it like a dog and came here to find you. I don't know what he's up to. Tang Jing said angrily. 100 Faces was prepared to slay the dragon, but when he saw that it was the 5-clawed golden dragon and that it was imprisoned, he immediately changed his plan. In fact, 100 Faces was so confident that he came to slay the dragon because he had misjudged the situation. He thought that there must be a weak young dragon under the imperial city. Otherwise, it wouldn't be imprisoned here. Therefore, he was confident that he could kill this young dragon and extract its essence. He could also force out the secret of the dragon clan. However, he never thought that it would be a 5-clawed golden dragon. The 5-clawed golden dragon was already considered a very powerful dragon clan. One had to know that the dragon embroidered on the emperor's dragon robe only had 5 claws, which was the 5-clawed golden dragon. They already thought that this was the limit of dragons. However, 100 Faces knew that the 5-clawed golden dragon was only the middle level of strength in the dragon clan. The highest level could reach 9 claws, which was really powerful. However, even if it was a 5-clawed golden dragon, it was still extremely powerful. It was far from being something that ordinary cultivators could contend against. Therefore, when he saw that it was a 5-clawed golden dragon that was imprisoned, he couldn't help but admire the strong person who imprisoned it. His methods were really not something that ordinary people could compare to. Since the other party was a 5-clawed golden dragon, then his previous plan could not be carried out. If he wanted to kill a dragon, he could still do it. However, if it was a 5-clawed golden dragon, then he knew that he did not have the ability to do so. Moreover, he was sure that Orochi would not be able to escape misfortune if he stayed above and was besieged. Without Orochi, if he could subdue the 5-clawed golden dragon, that would be a joyous occasion. How could Orochi be compared to the 5-clawed golden dragon? This was a dragon, which was worlds apart from a snake. The 100 Transformation Star Sovereign rolled his eyes and looked at Tang Jing with a smile that was not a smile. He said meaningfully, "I am really curious as to how you are able to coexist peacefully with a 5-clawed golden dragon. You are clearly very familiar with it. However, this is not a problem for me. When I saw its shackles, I understood everything." Tang Jing suddenly had an ominous premonition and said, "What do you understand? You can coexist peacefully with it, so you must have reached some kind of agreement. If I am not wrong, it wants to use you to escape from here, right?" 100 Faces stared at Tang Jing as he said this. He wanted to distinguish the truth of his words from his reaction. Tang Jing's heart beat wildly. 100 Faces was too smart. He actually guessed the truth just by relying on this superficial information. Tang Jing finally understood what that ominous premonition was. Because once 100 Faces knew about the agreement between him and the 5-clawed golden dragon, he could completely replace him. Moreover, 100 Faces' cultivation was far higher than Tang Dang's. He had already reached the divine transformation realm. He could completely break the formation and release the 5-clawed golden dragon. With the 5-clawed golden dragon's eagerness to escape, Tang Jing could not guarantee that it would not be moved. As if to confirm his guess, the 100 Change Star Lord continued, "Although I don't know what conditions are needed to break this formation and release the 5-clawed golden dragon, I think cultivation is one of them. Your cultivation is still too low, so you haven't succeeded. Am I right?" Tang Jing was silent, speechless. "Haha, your cultivation is not enough, but I can." 100 Faces laughed wildly. He turned around and stared straight at the 5-clawed golden dragon, looking into its 2 breathtaking huge dragon eyes. "I am afraid you are already very worried about being trapped here. I can release you immediately. How about it?" Although the 5-clawed golden dragon was powerful, it was imprisoned here after all. There was no way its strength could be compared to its peak state. Therefore, 100 Faces was not too afraid of it. Therefore, there was nothing wrong with letting it out. Moreover, when it was about to escape, when its guard was at its weakest, he could use some means to control the 5-clawed golden dragon like how he controlled Yamada no Orochi. Haha, subduing a 5-clawed golden dragon. It was so cool just thinking about it. Since ancient times, he had never heard of anyone who could do this. The 5-clawed golden dragon had once asked the Empyrean Fairy to release it, but the Empyrean Fairy had mercilessly refused. Because of this, it was quite dissatisfied with the Empyrean Fairy. At this moment, when it heard 100 Faces' words, it was indeed moved. "Are you serious?" 100 Faces glanced at Tang Jing. When he saw Tang Jing's expression change greatly, he could not help but say proudly, "Haha, of course, I am willing to help others." The five-clawed golden dragon did not immediately agree. The look in its eyes kept changing. It looked at Tang Jing for a while and then looked at 100 Faces as if it was making a choice. Tang Jing could not sit still and said quickly, "Five-clawed golden dragon, don't listen to his nonsense. He is vicious and definitely has no good intentions." "Haha, do you have good intentions?" The Empyrean fairy clearly could have released it, but she turned a blind eye to it. "This is the most despicable behavior. Letting it be imprisoned for one more day means that it will suffer a little more. You don't think about the five-clawed golden dragon at all. Your intentions are terrible," 100 Faces complained. Tang Jing's face turned ashen. This unforeseen event was too big and completely disrupted his steps. However, the five-clawed golden dragon was in charge of all this, so he quickly advised, "Five-clawed golden dragon, don't be deceived by him. He has no good intentions." The five-clawed golden dragon looked deeply at Tang Jing and could not help but remember the argument with Tang Jing some time ago. Tang Jing did not approve of its revenge on humans after it was released, and even made it very unhappy. Could it be that for this reason, he deliberately encouraged the Empyrean fairy to not agree to its request, so that it could continue to be imprisoned here? Chapter 897. Seeing the five-clawed golden dragon's eyes, Tang Jing's heartbeat accelerated. He knew that things were developing in a direction he didn't want to see the most. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign succeeded in sowing discord with a few words, causing the five-clawed golden dragon to have other thoughts. "Tang Jing, you want to imprison me here forever, don't you?" the five-clawed golden dragon asked angrily. Tang Jing firmly shook his head and said truthfully, "I never had such thoughts." "Haha, who would believe your words? You don't mean what you say. Even if your cultivation is not good enough, the Empyrean fairy's cultivation is here. If you ask, would she not agree?" The 100 Faces Star Sovereign continued to provoke. Tang Jing frowned. He couldn't wait to kill the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. This person's mind was too vicious. Although he was indeed worried that the five-clawed golden dragon would harm the human world, he would not break his promise. At that time, he promised to wait until his cultivation reached the deity transformation realm before breaking the formation and freeing the five-clawed golden dragon. Now that his cultivation was far from that level, he couldn't break the formation, so he didn't break his promise. In fact, he had been thinking of a way to subtly dissolve the five-clawed golden dragon's hatred for humans. Even if it wanted to take revenge, it would have to find the person who imprisoned it. What did it have to do with these ordinary people now? He believed that with his efforts, he would be able to dissolve the five-clawed golden dragon's hostility to ordinary people before letting it go. But he didn't expect that after the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's interruption, everything would be in vain. Seeing Tang Jing's expression of wanting to kill him, the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's lips curled into a proud sneer. The five-clawed golden dragon still stared at Tang Jing and said, "I don't believe your words." Tang Jing was very depressed and said unwillingly, "If you believe him, you will definitely regret it in the future. I just want to get out as soon as possible. I will naturally believe whoever can help me get out," the five-clawed golden dragon said stubbornly. Tang Jing shook his head and sighed. He had nothing to say. "100 Change Star Sovereign, can you really help me regain my freedom?" the five-clawed golden dragon asked. The 100 Change Star Sovereign laughed out loud. "Haha, of course. If he can do it, I can do it too. If he can't, I can do it too." The five-clawed golden dragon was very satisfied with the 100 Change Star Sovereign's confidence. He nodded slightly and said, "Then help me get out of here." Multiform Starlord's eyes lit up as he looked at Tang Jing provocatively. He roared, "Good!" and then prepared to attack. The Empyrean fairy snorted and finally stood up. "Do you really think I'm invisible? You want to stop me?" The five-clawed golden dragon flew into a rage and glared fiercely at the Empyrean fairy. The Empyrean fairy wasn't afraid at all. She stared back at it and said, "It's useless for you to stare at me. Do you think you can kill me? Wait until I'm free. I definitely won't let you go," the five-clawed golden dragon said. The Empyrean fairy curled her lips. "Then I can't let you get out." After saying this, she looked at the 100 Change Star Sovereign with contempt. "Do you really think it's easy to break the formation? With our interference, do you think you can succeed?" The 100 Change Star Sovereign's heart skipped a beat. He didn't dare to make any guarantees, but he still didn't back down. "No matter how you interfere, I'm determined to save the five-clawed golden dragon. Don't you know how cruel it is to imprison it here?" The 100 Change Star Sovereign obviously wanted to show off in front of the five-clawed golden dragon. He even said such ridiculous words. "You still have the nerve to say the word cruel? Don't you know how many people you've killed?" The Empyrean fairy jokingly retorted. "Humph, in this world, the strong are respected. The weak are prey to the strong. What does it matter if the weak die? The five-clawed golden dragon is a strong person, so it naturally shouldn't suffer," the 100 Change Star Sovereign said righteously. But all of this was twisted logic. Tang Jing finally couldn't help but scold. "Nonsense, do the weak deserve to die?" Tang Jing couldn't help but recall his childhood. At that time, he was weak, and even his grandfather was insignificant. Did he deserve to be bullied? Especially when he was in school, he didn't have any grades, so he was bullied. Did this deserve it? Nonsense. If one could only be called strong by bullying the weak, then could one still be called strong? That could only mean that they were strong on the outside but weak on the inside. They could only show their strength by bullying those who were weaker than them. This was a kind of false strength that could be broken in one strike. After hearing Tang Zheng's question, the 100 Change Star Sovereign said as a matter of fact, "Of course, the weak have no right to speak. The five-clawed golden dragon is imprisoned here, so it is also a weak person. What reason does it have to go out?" Tang Zheng roared. "You dare say I'm weak?" The five-clawed golden dragon roared, its huge body twisted, causing the shackles to clatter. The huge dragon head leaned towards Tang Jing, spitting out dragon breath, causing Tang Zheng's clothes to flutter. Tang Jing didn't retreat at all, staring straight at the five-clawed golden dragon, the big and small forming a strong contrast. However, Tang Zheng's aura was not weak, allowing the dragon breath to blow on him like a blade. The 100 Change Star Sovereign was also shocked by the five-clawed golden dragon's actions and aura. Even if it was him facing this kind of aura, he couldn't help but be frightened. This Tang Zheng's cultivation was still weak, but he could calmly accept it. However, he didn't know that Tang Jing cultivated the dragon god arts, and his body had long accumulated dragon qi, secretly containing the dragon's might. Moreover, after being with the five-clawed golden dragon for so long, he had long been immune to its aura. Tang Jing didn't even blink as he coldly stared at the five-clawed golden dragon in front of him, saying, "According to the 100 Change Star Sovereign's theory, you are weak. You!" The five-clawed golden dragon opened its mouth and let out a dragon roar. The strong wind blew Tang Jing back a few steps, and then his feet fell heavily on the ground, as if they had taken root and sprouted, rooted to the ground, motionless. Seeing this situation, the 100 Change Star Sovereign couldn't help but admire Tang Deng's courage in addition to being frightened. However, this trace of admiration disappeared in a flash, and then turned into a strong hostility. The more extraordinary Tang Jing was, the more he wanted to get rid of him, and nip all the possible threats in the future in the bud. Seeing that Tang Jing had brought the flames of war to his side, the 100 Transformation Star Lord gnashed his teeth in hatred and immediately defended himself. "You are twisting words and forcing logic. When did I say that the five-clawed golden dragon is weak? I have always emphasized that it is strong, absolutely strong, without a doubt. But it is imprisoned here, can it still be considered strong? Before you flatter me, you better check if there are any loopholes in your point of view, humph," Tang Jing said disdainfully. The 100 Change Star Sovereign's face stiffened. There were indeed loopholes in his point of view. But before he spoke, he didn't expect Tang Jing to be so smart, to be able to find his loopholes so easily. But even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't admit it, so he just directly said, "Five-clawed golden dragon, let's not talk nonsense with them. The most important thing is to break the formation first." The five-clawed golden dragon thought for a moment, then nodded. "That's reasonable." Then he glared at Tang Jing and said, "If you dare to stop me, don't blame me for not caring about our old friendship. Are you going to kill me? Don't think that just because you are a Skywalker, I won't dare to kill you." The five-clawed golden dragon said angrily. The 100 Change Star Sovereign also said, "Skywalkers are not that great. Back then Chi-Yu was so powerful, but didn't you also extinguish your life and death lamp? I am still alive, but he is dead. Tell me, what is so great about Skywalkers?" The 100 Change Star Sovereign thought that he was very proud of himself, but this sentence poked a hornet's nest. Chi-Yu's heart flew into a rage. "I want to kill the 100 Change Star Sovereign. Who does he think he is, to dare to ridicule me like this?" The inner demons said with Schadenfreude. "Although this person is spouting nonsense, but this sentence is deeply touched by my heart. Chi-Yu, you are not that great in the first place." Chi-Yu coldly snorted and said, "I am not that great, but back then I also imprisoned you in that canyon." The inner demons was speechless, faintly said, "Can you not mention that matter back then? You were the one who wanted to mention it. Now you know how it feels to poke a sore spot?" Chi-Yu retorted. Hearing the two of them arguing again, Tang Jing angrily said, "Stop arguing. Think of a way to solve the crisis in front of us. We definitely can't let the 100 Faces Star Sovereign release the five-clawed golden dragon. He wants to break the formation, and with the help of the five-clawed golden dragon, you might not be able to stop him." The inner demons said pessimistically, "Didn't you always boast that you are very powerful? Why are you retreating at the last moment, and at a loss of what to do?" Tang Jing unhappily said sarcastically, "Who said I am not powerful?" Chi-Yu retorted, "We must think of a way to teach the 100 Change Star Sovereign a lesson. We can't let him be so arrogant. He still dares to say that Skywalkers are not powerful. Skywalkers are thousands of times more powerful than him. He is not even qualified to carry the shoes of a Skywalker." Chi-Yu's temper was not very good. The 100 Change Star Sovereign's words had touched his reverse scale, so he was like a barrel of gunpowder, exploding at the slightest touch. "Get to the point, there is a way," Tang Jing roared inwardly. Chi-Yu hesitated for a moment and said, "There is definitely a way, but I haven't thought of one yet. Let me think about it." Tang Jing really wanted to chop him into pieces. If there was no way, then what was the point of talking about it? By the time he thought of a way, it would already be too late. The inner demons did not forget to attack him. "Don't think about it, there is no way." Hearing the inner demon's words, Tang Jing angrily shouted, "Shut up!" As soon as his voice fell, the inner demon couldn't say a word. Chi-Yu laughed dryly with pride. "You are still laughing. If you can't think of a way, then don't even think about talking," Tang Jing said fiercely. Chi-Yu's laughter stopped abruptly, and he hurriedly racked his brains to think of a solution. Tang Jing coldly looked at the 100 Change Star Sovereign and said, "You insulted Skywalkers, especially Chi-Yu. You will be very miserable, I promise." The 100 Change Star Sovereign snorted and said disdainfully, "I will be miserable. What can you do to me? Humph, what a shameless boast." Break the formation. The five-clawed golden dragon did not want to argue anymore. It impatiently roared. It had been imprisoned for hundreds of years. It already could not wait to see the light of day again. Chapter 898. The moment the array was broken, the 100 Change Star Sovereign took action. "The core of the array is behind me. Go in quickly," the five-clawed golden dragon said. With a wave of its tail, it blocked the path of Tang Jing and the Empyrean Fairy. The 100 Change Star Sovereign sneered as his evil plan succeeded. He went past the five-clawed golden dragon and arrived behind it. "Stop him!" Tang Jing shouted. There was something in the core of the array that was very important to him, the heaven and earth black stone. This array was maintained by the heaven and earth black stone. If the array was broken, the heaven and earth black stone would definitely reappear in the world. The 100-change star sovereign was very familiar with the heaven and earth black stone. Back then, the stairway to heaven was destroyed by him. If he snatched the heaven and earth black stone, then Tang Jing would cry but have no tears. So, the Empyrean fairy flew over and the dragon's tail swept towards her. She shouted and took out the mountain river map. A terrifying pressure came from the mountain river map. A vine extended out and clashed with the dragon's tail in midair. Bang! With a loud sound, the hall shook. The vine broke into two and the dragon's tail flickered with golden light. However, the attack came to an abrupt end. The Empyrean fairy took the opportunity to fly over the 5-clawed golden dragon's head and landed in front of the door. The 100-change star sovereign had already pushed the door open. "Stop!" the Empyrean fairy shouted. Whoosh! A strong gust of wind blew behind her. Without turning her head, the Empyrean fairy pointed her finger backward and a huge rock flew out of the painting of mountains and rivers of the gods of Vale. Another explosive sound rang out as the dragon's tail swept across the boulder. Rubble flew everywhere like sharp arrows. Tang Jing took out the sacred armor shield and blocked the rocks. Then, he leaped up and waved War Soul to attack. Since the 5-clawed golden dragon was not benevolent, then he had no more worries. He had to stop them. Boom! Heaven flying immortal, a sword from the west. The War Soul sword directly slashed onto the 5-clawed golden dragon's body, creating an intense spark. The golden light flickered and then gradually disappeared. The scale armor actually dimmed and lost its luster. Tang Jing was secretly delighted. The War Soul sword was indeed worthy of being a saint artifact. Its power was indeed extraordinary. The 5-clawed golden dragon glared at Tang Jing and said in surprise, "Your War Soul sword has actually become a holy artifact?" Tang Jing had not displayed his magic treasure in front of it for a long time, so the 5-clawed golden dragon did not know about the transformation of the War Soul sword. The scales of the 5-clawed golden dragon were invulnerable. Ordinary magical weapons would not be able to harm it in the slightest. However, sacred tools were different. They could harm it. "How does my War Soul sword taste?" Tang Jing asked. "So what if it's a sacred tool? Do you really think you can beat me?" The 5-clawed golden dragon said disdainfully. "I don't expect to win, as long as you stop you." Tang Jing raised his sword and attacked again. With Tang Jing's help, the Empyrean fairy was temporarily relieved. Seeing that the 100-transformation star sovereign was about to rush to the eye of the array, she shook the mountain river map. A terrifying suction force gushed out from the mountain river map, firmly locking onto the 100-transformation star sovereign. The 100-transformation star sovereign roared, "Don't even think of stopping me!" The heavenly water banner waved behind it, causing a flood to appear out of thin air, sweeping towards the Empyrean fairy. This space was not big to begin with. When the flood appeared, it occupied almost half of the space. Most of the 5-clawed golden dragon's body was submerged under the water. The Empyrean fairy was not afraid at all. The mountain river map suction force was activated, and in an instant, the flood was sucked in. But after such a delay, it was already too late. The 100-transformation star sovereign stood in the eye of the array and immediately used his magic to break the array. Boom! With a loud bang, the entire space shook violently. Rays of dazzling white light gushed out from the eye of the array, illuminating the surroundings. It even overshadowed the 5-clawed golden dragon's golden light and the luminous pearl's radiance. The white light intertwined to form a light screen, enveloping the 100-transformation star sovereign. Boom, boom, boom! The earth trembled, and everyone felt dizzy. They swayed left and right, and the stones on the walls fell one by one. Tang Jing's expression changed abruptly. He could not care less about the 5-clawed golden dragon. He exclaimed, "Oh no, he has already started to break the array." "I know," the Empyrean fairy said coldly. Her figure flashed, wanting to rush into the light screen to stop the 100 transformations Star Sovereign. Bang! However, with a muffled sound, the Empyrean fairy crashed into the light screen, causing circles of ripples. The light screen was intact and did not shatter. The Empyrean fairy was stunned. She knew very well how powerful her attack was, but the light screen did not even budge. It was strange. She snorted coldly. She did not believe it and rushed out again. Bang! She was bounced back again. 100 Change Star Sovereign was still worried at first, but when he saw that the light screen was safe and sound and that the 9 Heavens Maiden had returned without any success, he was overjoyed. He laughed wildly. "Haha, 9 Heavens Maiden, continue. I want to see how you're going to break in." Tang Jing was also stunned. What was going on with this light? Even the Empyrean fairy could not break through it. The 5-clawed golden dragon also stopped and looked at the Empyrean fairy with ridicule. "Don't waste your energy. You won't be able to break through. The array is already disintegrating bit by bit. I can feel that I will soon regain my freedom." As his voice fell, the chains on the dragon's claws began to clatter and emit a metallic luster. The hall shook violently. The stones on the walls fell off as if there was an earthquake. At the same time, the entire capital moved. The earth seemed to have awakened. At first, there was a slight tremor, but then it became more intense. Beams of light rose into the air from all directions of the capital. Those who were familiar with the geography of the capital would know that these beams of light were coming from the gates of the old city walls of the capital. But now that the old city walls had been destroyed, most people would not be able to see any clues. These beams of light shot into the sky, illuminating the night sky. Cries of alarm rang out in the capital. Many people crawled out of their beds and shouted, "Earthquake! Earthquake!" The shaking continued, but it did not cause the buildings to collapse. It was obvious that the intensity was not that great. But this kind of scene was really frightening. There were also a few beams of light in the sky. It really felt like a science fiction movie. Tian Chanzi looked at this scene and turned pale with fright. How can this be? Number One's legs were about to go soft. He barely supported himself and asked, "What's going on?" Tian Chanzi muttered to himself. He had already come to a conclusion. This was breaking the array. Someone was about to release the 5-clawed golden dragon. What exactly happened below? Why did they release the 5-clawed golden dragon? Tian Chanzi could not figure it out, but he could not sit still and wait for death. He hurriedly cast a spell and prepared to enter to investigate. However, he found that it was useless. The array had become extremely unstable. He had no way of entering. He was so anxious that he stomped his feet. What should he do? Something big was going to happen. What was going on below? He was like an ant on a hot pan, anxiously running around in circles. Tang Jing, on the other hand, was not much better at the moment. The stones on the wall had completely fallen off, revealing a pitch-black space that one could not see the end of. "We can't sit still and wait for death. Chiyu, didn't I tell you to think of a way? Have you thought of one?" Tang Jing was flustered and exasperated. His face was ashen. "I'm still thinking of this method," Chiyu said hesitantly. "Think about it. If you can't think of a way, then we're all going to die here. There must be a way, but it will take time to think of a way." Tang Jing was fuming with anger. At this time, there was still so much nonsense. He was about to continue to get angry when he heard Chiyu's shout in surprise. "I thought of it, I thought of it." Tang Zhang's head trembled. A glimmer of hope ignited in him and said, "Say it quickly. Let's resolve the crisis." Chiyu did not dare to delay any longer and said quickly. Chiyu did not want to die. After saying that, he kept urging Tang Jing to move quickly. Tang Zhang's eyes widened in surprise. So it could be like this. Why didn't he say it earlier? Why did he have to wait until this moment of life and death to say it? Chiyu felt wrong. Didn't I just think of it? There are too many things in my head. I have to sort them out. Tang Jing tiptoed and rushed to the eye of the formation like an arrow. This time, the five-clawed golden dragon did not stop him. Instead, it looked at him mockingly. This was because it believed that Tang Jing had no way to penetrate the white light. Naturally, he would not be able to destroy this good thing. It was happy to see them work in vain. The Empyrean fairy had indeed worked for nothing. She had used all her skills, including the painting of mountains and rivers, but it was to no avail. That white light was like an indestructible barrier, protecting the multiform Star Sovereign with all its might. The crisp laughter of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign echoed around. He danced with joy. Haha, interesting, interesting. This is fun. You guys continue to watch. This is much more interesting than the days at Mount Bujo. The 100 Transformation Star-Lord had the appearance of a child to begin with. Now that he was in such high spirits, he looked exactly like a brat. However, when they thought of his actions and abilities, no one dared to treat him as a little kid. Instead, they felt a chill in their bones. Everything he did seemed like a game to him. However, to others, it was a matter of life and death. Tang Jing looked at the annoying 100 Faces Star Sovereign and said, "Don't be so happy. You'll cry later." "Is that so? Then I'll wait and see." The 100 Faces Star Sovereign laughed. "Fu Yao, move aside. I'll do it." "You'll do it?" The Empyrean fairy was shocked. She looked at him skeptically. Even she could not do anything. What could Tang Zhang do? However, looking at his confident look, her heart skipped a beat. Could it be that he really did have a way? She knew that at this critical moment, Tang Jing would not joke around. She moved aside and looked at Tang Jing with burning eyes. She did not know what he would do. Boom! Another loud sound rang out. The ground shook even more violently. Even the rocks above their heads were falling. However, the momentum of the imperial city's ground was even greater. With a loud bang, the ground caved in under everyone's eyes. Everyone cried out and hurriedly retreated. In an instant, a large hole appeared in the center of the imperial city. It was more than 10 meters deep. It was like a bloody mouth that wanted to devour people. "What's going on?" "The ground caved in, the ground caved in." Number 1 stared at the big pit with a burning gaze. This confirmed his previous conjecture. It was impossible to find a dragon by digging 3 feet into the ground. There was no dragon in this big pit that was more than 10 meters deep, right? But what was going on with such a huge battle formation? Chapter 899. If a real dragon was going to come out, then, he didn't dare to think too much. He quickly hid in a corner and dialed the chief's number. This important information must be reported in time. Tian Chanzi didn't even look at him. He just stared at the crater, and his heart was in turmoil. "Tang Jing, you brat, you better not let anything happen to you. I'm just worrying for nothing. He'll definitely be fine. After all, he's not weak, and he has the Empyrean fairy's protection." Even if he comforted himself like this, he still couldn't calm down. The ground was still shaking, and Tang Jing felt that the shaking was getting worse. He steadied himself and approached the light screen under the provocative eyes of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign. He stretched out his hand. The ridicule in the 100 Faces Star Sovereign's eyes became more obvious. Even the 5-clawed golden dragon looked at him disapprovingly. The Empyrean fairy was obviously nervous. Although she had been through hundreds of battles, she had never experienced such a thing. She was powerless. Could it be that Tang Jing had a solution? She couldn't think of what Tang Jing could do. Tang Jing's hand touched the light screen, and a strong rebounding force immediately bounced his hand away. If he used too much force, his whole body would have been bounced away. Ha! A burst of arrogant laughter sounded. The 100 Faces Star Sovereign mocked mercilessly. "So this is your solution? Why didn't it work?" Big words. Before he could finish the word shame, his throat seemed to be stuck because he saw an inconceivable and strange scene. A cold light flashed in Tang Geng's hand. He didn't attack the light screen. Instead, he cut his wrist. Blood spurted out and sprinkled on the white light. What was he doing? Tang Geng's eyes were extremely calm. He didn't care about the sarcasm of the 100 Faces Star Sovereign, because he had a clear purpose in doing all this. The 100 Change Star Sovereign could not figure out the reason no matter how hard he racked his brains. However, when he saw that there was no reaction, his expression changed, and the ridicule on his face became even stronger. He laughed wildly without concealing anything. Ha ha ha! It seems that you are at your wits' end. You are so anxious that you actually harmed yourself. Sigh, what a pity! I originally wanted to make you my toy, but it seems that I won't have the chance. The 100 Change Star Sovereign shook his head and sighed, as if it was a pity. Tang Jing looked straight ahead and turned a deaf ear to him. When the blood sprayed on the light curtain, he quickly stopped the bleeding. With a thought, his fingers moved and a mysterious seal appeared on his fingertips. The tip of his finger lit up with a red light that was as bright as blood. Suddenly, he pointed his finger forward. The red light shot out and landed right on top of the pool of blood, merging with the light screen. A sudden change occurred. The blood seemed to have a life of its own. It spread across the light screen, extending endlessly. It was like a spark of fire that quickly covered the entire light screen. The originally pure white light screen turned blood red, flickering with a demonic light. This change was beyond everyone's expectations. The 100 Change Star Sovereign opened his mouth so wide that a duck egg could be stuffed in. What the hell? What was going on? The 5-clawed golden dragon also wanted to ask the same question, but an ominous premonition gradually crept into its heart. Roar! A dragon roar shook the sky, causing pain in everyone's eardrums. Stop! The 5-clawed golden dragon roared and swept its tail directly at Tang Jing. The secret chamber was already small, and the 5-clawed golden dragon was too big. It was impossible for it to display its full power. However, the power of this attack was not small. It was enough to severely injure Tang Jing. However, Tang Jing did not seem to have seen it and focused on the light screen. Don't even think about it. How could the mysterious Maiden of the 9 Heavens turn a blind eye to it? Although she was also surprised by Tang Jing's actions and did not understand the mystery behind it, there was one thing she was sure of, and that was that this might be a turning point. Otherwise, the 5-clawed golden dragon would not have made such a big fuss. The Empyrean fairy blocked the 5-clawed golden dragon. Especially in such a narrow space, she had an innate geographical advantage. The 5-clawed golden dragon could not use its attack, and it could not do anything to the Empyrean fairy. It writhed its body in anger, and the chains rattled. The 100 Change Star Sovereign wanted to stop Tang Jing, but he could not do anything. This was because he was trapped in the light screen and could only watch as the light screen changed. His expression became abnormally serious, and it was as if a huge rock was pressing down on his heart. Suddenly, Tang Jing's eyes shone brightly. He roared, "Break!" Crack! A crack appeared on the light screen, then 2, 3, 10, 100. In the end, the light screen was covered with cracks like a spider's web. The 100 Transformation Star Sovereign was so frightened that he staggered backward and slammed into the light screen behind him. With a rumbling sound, it was like the final straw that crushed the light screen. The light screen completely collapsed and shattered into pieces. However, these fragments did not fall to the ground. Instead, they rose slowly like scarlet stars rising into the sky. The 100 Change Star Sovereign felt an inexplicable strangeness. He even felt a little afraid. Fear? This was the biggest joke in the world. The 100 Change Star Sovereign could actually feel fear. He could not remember how many years it had been since he last felt this way. However, there was no doubt that once he felt this way, it was not a good thing. Without hesitation, he flew backward and retreated out of the formation eye. The red light rose slowly and gathered in midair. Suddenly, Tang Jing stretched out his hand and shouted, "Gather!" These red lights were like obedient soldiers. They quickly gathered in Tang Zheng's palm and turned into a ball of light the size of a finger. It danced in Tang Geng's palm like a flame. "What's going on?" the 100 Change Star Sovereign asked in bewilderment. Tang Zheng's lips curled into a mysterious smile. He looked at the 100 Change Star Sovereign meaningfully and said, "You don't know? Didn't you say you were very smart? Why can't you guess?" The 100 Change Star Sovereign's face turned red. "What did you do? Why isn't it shaking anymore?" Unknowingly, the surroundings had stopped shaking and returned to normal. Didn't this mean that the formation had failed? If the formation had been successfully broken, then this space would no longer exist in vain. "Of course it's because I stopped your stupid actions," Tang Jing said in a mocking tone. He was very pleased with himself. The older the ginger, the spicier it was. Qiyu had actually thought of a way at the last moment. This made him overjoyed. Qiyu's method was very simple. It was to use blood as a catalyst, and use a secret technique to stop the other party from breaking the formation. Of course, this blood was not ordinary blood. It had to be a sufficiently powerful bloodline. A celestial naturally had a sufficiently powerful bloodline. However, just having a powerful bloodline was not enough. It had to be accompanied by a corresponding secret technique. Qiyu racked his brains and finally found such a secret technique in the depths of his memories. Tang Jing had used blood as a catalyst, especially the last red light. That was not light, but blood. However, it was Qiyu's heart's blood. This heart's blood contained Qiyu's many years of essence, energy, and spirit. This drop of heart's blood was the brush that drew the dragon. Under the activation of the heart's blood, coupled with Tang Zheng's blood and the secret technique, all of this happened naturally. Halfway through, the formation was stopped. The 100 Change Star Sovereign would never have dreamed that this would happen. He had never thought that there would be such a secret technique. However, he did not know that Qiyu was the leader of the Nine Li tribe. The Nine Li tribe had many secret techniques that were unknown to others. There were so many that even Qiyu could not remember them all. "Just how did you accomplish all of this?" The 100 Change Star Sovereign was unwilling to give up. Why should I tell you? All you need to know is that you have failed. You have nowhere to run," said Tang Jing with killing intent. "You want me to admit defeat? Dream on." "I, the 100 Change Star Sovereign, will not be defeated. You are all my puppets. How could I be defeated by my puppets?" The 100 Change Star Sovereign was flustered and exasperated. Tang Jing was just about to prepare to deal with the 100 Change Star Sovereign when the 5-clawed golden dragon's furious roar rang out from behind him. "Tang Jing, you ruined my plans. I won't let you off." Boom! The dragon's tail swept out, and that narrow door was actually shattered. The dragon's tail swept straight in, sweeping towards Tang Jing. "Impudent!" the Empyrean fairy sternly shouted. The 5-clawed golden dragon actually ignored her existence. Thus, she once more attacked at lightning speed, clashing with the 5-clawed golden dragon. The words heaven and earth turned upside down were not enough to describe the battle between the two. Fortunately, this was a foreign space. Otherwise, the shockwaves would have spread far and wide. Tang Jing did not have the time to pay attention to the 5-clawed golden dragon. He was still digesting what he had obtained. Just now, that drop of bright red light in his palm was Qiyu's heart blood. The heart blood seeped out from his palm, following the blood vessels all the way to Qiyu's heart. Wherever it passed, Tang Jing felt a huge amount of energy seeping into his blood. Then, it flowed throughout his body, entering his 8 extraordinary meridians, limbs, and bones. Tang Jing was shocked. This Qiyu's heart blood was really powerful. Moreover, it was mixed with the light screen of the array. Its power was not to be underestimated. Although he had Qiyu's heart, he had never discovered Qiyu's heart blood. He did not even know about this matter. Qiyu's heart, other than maintaining his heartbeat and body skills, was not very important to him. However, it was obvious that he had neglected it. Or rather, Qiyu could hide it and deceive him. How much more is Chiyu hiding from me? At that time, he was hiding in my body silently. Just like the inner demon said, he must have had some kind of intention for my body. This Chiyu's heart must be very important. That was why he repeatedly told him to return it to him after using it. He also said that if the heart blood did not return to Chiyu's heart, his heart would stop beating and he would die. But now, Tang Jing felt the powerful energy in this drop of heart blood and gradually had a different idea. Was Chiyu deceiving him? If the heart blood absorbed the energy of the light screen and returned to his heart, would there be any unexpected changes or consequences? He could clearly feel that after the heart blood absorbed the energy of the light screen, it was stronger than before. If it entered his heart, wouldn't it be Chiyu's heart that was stronger? His heartstrings trembled. Although Chiyu could not make any big waves because of the checks and balances of the inner demons, if he had this drop of heart blood, would he become stronger? Or even take over his body? You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.